T minus 20 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Mess with the wrong melon farmers. Thug life. And here we go.
I prayed that he would burn in hell, but in my heart, I never held.
Then I will avenge his death.
Hello, Sippy. Are you a
Don't you
The Force will be with you. Always.
Wish I had you all alone, just the two of us.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Movies and Beyond. Once again, I am Michael, and today, Matt, it's Sunday. I'm here with Mad from Mad Matt's Mass. As always, what is up, my friend?
Not much, Michael. I'm just, man, I'm excited. We got, we got some cool things to cover today.
Oh yeah.
We're back on. We're talking horror, and it's good to be here, Michael. It's good to be here.
Definitely, man, definitely. And something crazy for us is we were actually on time today. Usually we're 8:05, we're 8:10, but today we were actually on time. I actually clicked the live button and it was 7:59. I said, "Oh my God, they're not going to know what to do because we're actually on time today."
We should write that. What's the date?
7:23.
7:23.
So next week, it'll probably be like 8:15.
Hey,
guys,
man,
I'm not gonna say
it's been a good weekend all around, man. I got some time in with my daughter. The booth was good this weekend. Got to see James, some of my good friends. You stopped in,
yeah,
and yeah, like I always say, when I can end the weekend talking with you fine people about horror, what else can man ask for?
Oh yeah, and not just horror, man. We're talking the fan film stuff, and we're not just talking the fan film stuff. We're talking the Friday the 13th fan film stuff. You know how I am with Friday the 13th, man. That's my jam. And our guest today is, in my opinion, the man responsible for the, and I'll talk a little bit about that when he gets on here. But I definitely want to welcome Vincent DiSanti to Movies and Beyond. What is up, Vincent? We are happy to have you here, sir.
What up, Mike and Matt? How you guys doing?
Great, buddy. Great.
Hanging in there. We got people in the chat already. I want to go through and say what's up to everybody there before we get started. We're talking. Russell Dorsey's in the chat saying, "What's up, everyone? I smashed that like button like the Death Star before I came in this awesome stream and chat. Happy Sunday, everyone." Russell, you messed me up on that one because I'm used to your regular intro. You threw the Death Star in there, and I'm not hating it, buddy. I'm definitely not hating it.
Russell, great to see you on here, buddy.
Definitely. Lydia's in the chat saying, "Howdy ho, officers." What is up, Lydia?
Hello, Lydia. Good to see you.
Jerry Wilson is in the chat. What's up, Jerry? He's saying, "Hello, Womp." What's up, Womp Stomp Films?
What's up, Jerry?
Here.
Jerry, hope you have a good weekend, buddy. Good to see you.
Yeah, definitely. And James has entered the chat. James is saying, "Hi, everybody. I hope all of you had a great day." What is up, James?
Same to you, James. Right back at you, buddy.
Jeff D'Angelo is also in the chat saying, "Hello, everyone. Kaylee and I are here for right now, but we will be in and out." And hey, man, do what you got to do, buddy. We're just happy to have you here every weekend, Jeff.
Yeah. We appreciate you, Jeff, for sure. He'll stop on whether he's working, whatever. And yeah, we appreciate it, Jeff. Good to see you.
One thing before I move on to the next.
Kaylee, good to see you too. I'm sorry. Kaylee, awesome to see you on here.
Before we move on to the next person, I do just want to send a congratulations out and a thank you. Lydia is now a moderator for the channel, and she is going to be working with Val and Katie and Polar to get her up to speed, and she's going to be taking care of all you people in the chat. So make sure that you're being nice to Lydia and not getting out of line, or else you know what she's going to have to do. You guys know I'm just playing, but everybody give a big congratulations to Lydia because she is now a moderator for Movies and Beyond.
Yeah, absolutely. That is awesome. And yeah, we do appreciate you, Lydia, very much.
Yeah, thank you. Another moderator for the channel, Katie from Popping the Popcorn, is in the chat saying, "Hi, friends." What is up, Katie? How you doing today?
Hello, Katie.
Let's see. John is in the chat saying, "What's up, party people?" What is up, John? How you doing, buddy?
Good to see you, John. Good to see you. And hopefully I'll see you next weekend for the fights, my friend. We'll talk about that later, but good to see you, buddy.
Mad Mom, a.k.a. Teresa Stevens, is in the chat saying, "Hello, everybody." What is up, Teresa?
All right, Vinny, that is my mother. Good to see you on here, mother.
Kim is also in the chat saying, "Hey, everyone." What is up, Kim?
Nice. Hi, Kim. Good to see you.
And I think that I've got everybody.
Nice.
Well, Katie is saying, "Welcome to the mod squad, Lydia." So that is so awesome. Definitely awesome. Where do we begin? Vincent DiSanti, man, there's a million questions that I wanted to ask you and talk to you. Friday the 13th is my jam. Matt is a huge Friday the 13th fan. And I believe I said this to you at Mad Monster, but I want to do it not only on behalf of me, but on behalf of Movies and Beyond. For Friday the 13th alone, I just want to say thank you for the things that you have done with that, man. I mean, we were dead in the water without Never Hike Alone, man. And it actually leads me up to my first question, for you. When you decided that you were going to make a fan film, did you decide that you wanted to go all out and make a fan film, or did you specifically say, we need something Friday the 13th?
First of all, thank you. That means a lot. I think that at the time, I was just like every other Friday the 13th fan. I was frustrated. I was frustrated with the output that I had seen since I was a child. I watched the first 8 movies over and over and over again, and then New Line bought it, and it wasn't quite the same. And so there was always been this anticipation for a return to glory for Friday the 13th. I think for many people, 2009, it was it was a hit or miss with fans. I believe I was a miss with me. It was a hit with a lot of fans. But I think as a fan, I was like, man, it was so close though.
Yeah.
Like there were so many great elements, but it just didn't seem like it seemed like they put a really good team on the field, but they didn't come home with the championships, which would have been another franchise of multiple films coming out. We would have had, the 20 teams filled with a bunch of Friday the 13th films. And we watched a series of Friday the 13th films go through development. The sequel to 2009, which didn't get picked up, the found footage version that got turned into the 3D version that eventually got, pushed off to the side. And then there was the one that was supposed to come out in 2017, directed by Breck Eisner and written by Aaron Guzanowski, who wrote Prisoners. And so, and then that was canceled, because of Rings 2 bombing, or Rings, plural, bombing. Yeah. And so I think as a fan at the time, by the time that happened, Never Hike Alone was already kind of in full swing with what we were doing. But what most of it was just sort of I think the fans were sort of like, where does the franchise go from here? What do we want to see? What should Jason really look like? Because there was a lot of debate on the way that Jason looked, and there was just a lot of the way that the film should have been portrayed and what new movies should have been about. And I was very active on forums back then. That was before the internet really took over with streaming and things like this, and people coming on YouTube. I think that most of the fans, in early 2000s, early 20 teens, they were arguing on horror forums, and it was a lot of fun to discuss it. And I think where this all started for me was every Friday the 13th, I was doing something. I was like, all right, this Friday the 13th, I'm going to build a cosplay, and I'm going to take a photo. And so that's what it was for one Friday the 13th. And the next time was, I'm going to take this photo. And we had shot a couple, just me running through the forest shots, Richard Brookard style. Let's turn that into something. Let's do a little stop motion piece, which actually where I'm staying now is the woman who helped me does stop motion for that stuff way back in the day. And so for me, it started as this, every Friday the 13th, I planned to do something as if it was my personal favorite holiday, which it is. I mean, more than Halloween, more than Christmas, more than my birthday. When Friday the 13th rolls around, I'm the most excited. I love that day. I love the fact that people get freaked out by it. I think it's just a cool sounding name. I've loved the franchise my entire life. So that was kind of going on. And then eventually those little tidbits started to turn into bigger things. And I wanted to do a short film. And my thought was, I'm going to put together all the elements of Friday the 13th that I love. I'm going to put it all in just one package, and I'm just going to share it with people and see if people agree with me or just sort of are entertained by my vision of Friday the 13th. And this was actually around 2015 or 2014. We went out behind my apartment. There was a hill behind the apartment that we could get up into and shoot stuff. And part of Never Hike Alone, the actual Never Hike Alone, is there. But we shot this version of it, and it just wasn't good. There were things that were out of focus. There were, shots that were missing. The audio wasn't good. It didn't make a lot of sense, and it wasn't like it was in my head. Yeah. And I sort of went, I'm not going to show this to anybody. I'm going to sit on it. And some time went by, and I, researched more about cosplay, and the hood that I had wasn't very good, and I had no hands at the time, and the way the shirt looked, and it's just sort of it just feels too much like the past. I want to do something that's more modern. And so I started to regrow the look. I had written different short films for fun, one of them being Never Hike Alone. And then a couple other ones. I wrote another one called March 13th, 1988 or something like that. Or it was something that was going to be a backwoods hiker that went into the forest, but he did journals in a written journal, and I was going to set it in the 80s. And these were all just wild ideas that I had and stuff that I had jotted down. And eventually the original version of Never Hike Alone with another version of Never Hike Alone and that version all came together to create that storyline of someone going into the forest, discovering a lost trail while they are making a YouTube video with their, for their audience. They run into Jason in the forest, at the camp, and then they're chased out, and do they live or die? And the original idea was about 5 to 6 minutes. It was very short. It was an introduction to the guy walking into the woods. It was walking around the camp a little bit. Then immediately Jason just pops out. As soon as Jason knows somebody's in the in the camp, he just goes after him. There's a near miss. The guy gets away. There's sort of a tussle at the no trespassing sign scene, or the no trespassing sign sort of location. And then in the original version, the hiker was killed and dragged back into the forest. And while we were shooting a trailer for that in early 2016, I had sort of gone back to the drawing board, rebuilt my team, got the right equipment, did a little bit more research, figured out why I didn't achieve what I wanted to achieve in my previous attempt. And we went out and made this trailer that became the first trailer that was released on May 13th in 2016. And it was very simple. It was that story, you know, kind of buttoned down. We had these cabins that we shot at that were, you know, really cool looking, and we didn't have access to the interiors, but just walking around them, we could make it feel like Camp Crystal Lake. You know, it was a very low budget, but at the same time using our skills as filmmakers and renting some decent equipment and, you know, spending a couple $100 and spending some good money on a good costume, building that costume. We were able to put this, you know, that trailer together. And while we were doing that trailer, the people who lived by the cabin that we were shooting at asked us if we wanted to shoot at the camp. And we said we didn't have money to do it. And that's when they tipped us off that there was an abandoned camp down the street. So a few weeks later, we went and researched where that camp would be. It took me a little bit of while to find it. It wasn't on Google Maps anymore. I had to do a little bit more digging.
Oh, wow.
The trailer had been picked up on like Friday the 13th franchise.com. So people were starting to get aware with it. It was starting to kind of move around the forums a little bit. And we saw that people were, you know, interested in what we were doing. This doesn't look like another fan film I've seen before. It actually looks like there's a little bit more, you know, care and budget into it. But at the same time, it did wear some of those indie sort of spirit looks. But, you know, with the advent of, you know, personal drones, which we had one to shoot some establishing shots, which people were like, ooh, that, you know, that's pretty. Like, that's actually really, really nice. So we had the advent of that. We had the advent of digital, you know, DSLRs and things that were shooting in 4K. And, you know, we had the ability to get a cinematic image, and we had some things that looked good. But when we found that camp, we realized that we had something very special, that we had a set. Not only just a set, but multiple sets, multiple buildings, multiple rooms, multiple like things that we could build. And so once we found that set, that's when the idea for Never Hike Alone started to expand. That's when we got the idea to do like, oh, we could do a big driving sequence, because when we drive to the camp, there's this awesome road we drive on. So let's just go take the drone out and shoot some, you know, Andrew driving up the mountain in a car. Oh, my neighbor happens to have this beautiful Ford Bronco that he never drives. Let me ask him if we can take it out to the mountains. Take it out to the mountains, drive it through the thing, get the shots, and basically piece by piece, you know, scene by scene, we're shooting this movie on the weekends while we're working full-time jobs, and seeing how much we could add to it. And, you know, a 5-minute idea went to a 20-minute idea, went to a 30-minute idea. And eventually, after, you know, some attempts to raise crowdfunding, raise private funding, you know, we ended with a 55-minute feature that we never intended to make, but in that span, sort of thinking about all the times that Friday the 13th fans had been let down by the 3 previous developments that got dropped. And all of a sudden in early 2017, we're halfway through the film. You know, they announced that, you know, Friday the 13th, 2017 is canceled. And the date, Friday the 13th, October, you know, of that year opens up as a release date for us. We were originally going to shoot for August and try to get ahead of it, and then release it, and, you know, maybe trick people to think that this is part of the new film. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Like let's not, you know, like hide anything. I mean, we wanted to get attention for it. We wanted people to want to watch it. We wanted people to be like, this is cool. Like, Jason's cool this way. But once that date opened up, we realized that we had sort of a job to do, which was to like cheer up fans, to like give them something to cheer about. And we just so happened to sign our guest star on that in that same month. So it was my idea to keep that secret. We never told anybody that there was going to be a guest star at the end of the film. We just wanted people to show up, watch our film, and then be surprised at the end. We didn't know what was going to happen afterwards. We, you know, debuted at Telluride Horror Show. We released it online at the same exact time. And since then, you know, I think that Friday the 13th fan films, and, you know, in some ways, you know, our independent circuit hasn't really been the same since, because it launched my career, you know, as a director. And I think it showed a lot of fans around the world that, you know, a cinematic, well-told fan film is not something that is, you know, that it can exist, you know, that it actually can be done, that if you take your time, you do it right, you treat it like anything else, that you could take something, you know, work in the fan film space, follow those rules, and deliver something that doesn't feel like a fan film, something that feels passionate, something that feels like it belongs with the rest of the stories. And I think picks up where a lot of the films left off that people love. So you see a lot of fan films sort of picking up at different points in the series, depending on which films are people's favorite. And you start to see those Jasons appear in those types of films. So it was really cool. But I think with Never Hike, it was our focus to create something that was an extension, something original. We didn't want to do we didn't want to take a costume from the past. We didn't want to just continue and pick it up from one place. We wanted to feel like some time had passed and to put it into today's world and make it grounded. And I think that, it was a combination of all that. It was that drive to make that film the way it was. But it was also sort of in the back of our heads, like, let's give Friday the 13th fans something to cheer about. And I think on Friday the 13th, October 2017, we did.
I definitely agree. Matt and I were talking backstage, before you came on, and we were saying, when Never Hike Alone came out in 2017, that set a new standard for fan films. I mean, believe it or not, and I'm sure that you already know, anybody that makes a fan film now is going to look at Never Hike Alone and say, this is the standard that we want to get to. I guarantee that, because prior to that, you had Dave McCrae was on the channel a few weeks ago, and he said, kids playing with sticks in the backyard, which, is a great analogy for, some of the fan films that are out there, because it's, people grabbing their phone, they're grabbing, an old school camcorder, prior to that, without the actual, I wouldn't say, it was totally ignorant to it, but without the actual filmmaking knowledge actually put into it, and knowing
but the tools weren't there yet either.
Right.
You know what I mean?
That is true.
Even if they had the skills,
yeah,
renting those cameras was too expensive. And the home video cameras that we had do not have that cinematic look. They have the home video look. And so I think, and when people think about fan film, they think about that. And I just have to say that, like, there were fan films before Never Hike Alone that were super and way more cinematic. But there's like there was some in the Star Trek world. There's a lot in the Star Wars world. There's a lot in sort of the Marvel cosplay, fight world. I think about things like Dirty Laundry and the Dark Power Rangers, and some of the other, Predator Dark Ages. Batman, the one where he fights Predator. I can't remember the name.
That
of
was awesome.
That was awesome.
I just recently came across that, Vinny.
Those, I believe, all predated us. I think that the one thing that we did different was, and it helps because it had to do with our subject matter, putting us out in the forest. I think the scope and the scale of the way that we shot in the San Bernardino National Forest, the way that we were able to use the mountains to expand it out and make it feel like you were watching The Shining at the opening of the movie. And then, the camp made it feel big. And I think that even those very slick, awesome fan films, you usually see them locked into one location or in a couple locations that look okay, but sort of feel indie budget. And that camp was the thing that was like, no one has a camp that looks like this. This is special. This place is special. Let's make use of every single square inch of this camp and come up with shots and scenes. And that's how the film expanded. Was I was writing to what we actually had versus trying to either make it work for something that couldn't handle a big storyline, or trying to, do too much with not enough. You know what I mean? So I think that was what gave us the chance to do that. And the fact that we took, a year to shoot it. So, we were dedicated to making it look as professional as possible. And, a lot of credit goes to my team. Chris Thellis, JD Martz, Kyle Klein, Sarah Cole cutting it, Lawrence Gann cutting it, Milton, color, Ryan Perez Dapple with the score, everybody just stepping up and Kelsey Burke with the effects, Jess Bennett with stunts. It was a collaborative team effort, and going to people that I had met in the indie circuit that were all specialized in certain areas and sort of bringing them all together on one project to say, all right, everyone's going to have a chance to shine, and I'm going to try and create the proper atmosphere and scenes for you to showcase your skills because you're all super talented. And by bringing everybody together, that I was able to achieve my vision, which was this, this horror adventure story that I thought could say Friday the 13th doesn't have to suck, and neither do fan films. It doesn't have to be the same old story every single time. There's other things Jason can do, and there's other ways to make Jason scary. And, I also wanted to make a big statement about the way Jason looked. It was, I haven't been very satisfied with the way Jason's looked in a long time. Things with inconsistencies with his costume and all those different things. So I tried to create something that was a little bit different too. So it was a combination of that too, which was like, what does the new Jason look like? And, taking a crack at that and having some success with that too.
I was lucky enough to see this movie and not know who your guest star was. So when I saw it, at the end, I was like, holy shit, that's Tom Matthews.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And it was just like, wow, man, like they really did it for this one. Matt, you remember the first time that you saw Never Hike Alone?
I do. And having Tom Matthews, like it brings me back to, because let's not forget the original, Friday the 13th. It ends with such a bang, one of the most iconic jump scares of all time. So then and then you can end Never Hike Alone with Tom Matthews coming out. It felt like that to me. Like it was a huge wow factor for me, and yeah, I thought it was awesome.
Yeah, and talk about putting a smile on fans' faces.
Yeah,
you know
absolutely.
What I mean? And we're all sitting back just like, I can't wait to get to this part. I can't wait for people to know. I've been sitting with that secret for 10 months.
That's awesome.
Just like, oh my God, wait till people see this. And
props to you. I couldn't have kept that secret.
I know. And so I think for me, it was really nice to see the reaction for everybody because it was such a pleasant surprise for everyone. And that's what made it special. And it was just like, I didn't care about too much other than the fact that when was the last time you watched a Friday the 13th and like cheered? You know what I mean? Like all of a sudden fans had something to cheer about. And that was what made me happy was, it was fine. And it was finally like, see, like this is what it could be. Like we could have more of this. And, obviously we do now. Too bad it's not with the studios right away, but I feel like, once Friday the 13th gets back into the limelight where it should be, we're going to see some awesome entries and it's going to be a lot of fun.
I feel like, and I hope, because like we touched on earlier, it just is true. There are some fan films out there that are pretty bad. And I'm sure there's some people that Vinny, I'm fairly new to fan films. I really am. I've been watching them for about two and a half years or so. So I'm fairly new, so unfortunately there's probably a few people that have maybe turned on 2 or 3, duds and just, said, hey, I'm done with them. So I just hope if, the more people that their first one is Never Hike Alone, they're going to be hooked, man. But it's films like that where, like you said, it can be done. But yeah, I think it set a whole nother standard.
Yeah. I think that's sort of true too. I think if sometimes if people turn into the wrong one, they may get, that's the taste they get. They're like, this is about what I expected. And they don't give the other ones a chance. And they're like, right. And a lot of people, bless their hearts, as they say, they get really behind some of the fan films, even when they lack it. They lack sort of the oomph. And so when people see that sort of passion and then someone comes to them with the same passion for Never Hike Alone, and they go, yeah, well, I saw that other one and that guy was passionate about it. Like, I'm sure your little one-on-one, because that's the thing too, is like Never Hike Alone has a lot of things working against it on paper. One-on-one, found footage. It's under an hour. It's, there's not a lot of kills in it. There's, it's a little bit of a slow burn. And so there's these excuses that if you're looking for something to get mad at in Never Hike Alone, you kind of can. But if you sit down and sort of wonder where it's going to take you, which when it originally launched, there was sort of there was supposed to be a misdirection with the film, which, now people just assume it's Friday the 13th. But when you first watched Never Hike Alone, you didn't know what it was. And all you saw was Never Hike Alone. You thought you were watching a hiking movie that slowly turned into a Friday the 13th, which was another cool part of the experience, I think, for some people when they first tuned in 2017. So, I think when people watch Never Hike Alone, if they're like a true blue Friday fan and they want to see those very specific, franchise elements right away, and they don't get it with Never Hike, they may turn it off, or they just may assume that how can this be good? Because honestly, I said the same thing to myself. I said, how do I make this good? Because these are all bad ideas. Like, I would never pitch this as a Friday the 13th film if I was in the room. I'd want like as many people as possible and all those different things. So it was a lot of working in our sandbags and saying, okay, how do we how do we take this premise and like make it something where it's going to like take people by surprise? And so a lot of it was the stunt work, Jess, Brian Forrest, Donnie Nichols, our stunt doubles, Andrew Lady doing a lot of his own stunts, me doing some of the stunts, and designing fights and making fights not look goofy. That was my first note. I was like, we got to make this not look stupid. Because you want to fight, but you don't want it to be like a Mortal Kombat kung fu battle where things are flying all over the place, and you don't want it to be boring either, and you don't want the guy to die right away, because then the movie is also, there's no tension, there's no buildup. You want somebody who feels like they could fight back. And the more I watched the films, the more I saw how much the final girls would fight back, and I would say, well, if they can fight back, then we can write a character that actually like goes toe to toe, takes a beating, but keeps going. That was another big difference too, was creating a durable character. Characters in slasher films are not very durable. They're very slow to react. They stand in place while there's things flying at them and they don't think to move. And they walk into dumb situations and they don't have the athletic ability to get out of things, nor sometimes the movie's just too lazy to give them any ability to get out of it. They just say, oh, you're standing in that spot, now you die. And to create a character that survived a high fall, that survives and dodges things, that can take an injury and get back up and keep going and not be stuck in a single place, that will fight back and get away, giving that final girl energy. I think that's what pulls people in. The other thing that pulls people in is Andrew Lady. The fact that he's so likable. So when you get going and you meet him as a YouTube vlogger, you almost forget that you're watching a Friday the 13th or a horror movie, because you're actually just watching this guy's channel as he rates what he's doing.
Yeah.
And, he's got stuff to say, and he's actually like actively kind of moving through each scene with something going on and something to talk about. And he's interesting and he's good looking. And, it's easy to sort of fall in love with him. Then all of a sudden, when he starts going down that path and you realize where the film is going and Jason starts to pop up and there's that element there, I think that's what makes it, the best sort of ride, is the fact that by the time we get to Jason, you're on Kyle's side. You're rooting for him. You're also just as curious as he is. I want to see Crystal Lake. I would love to walk around Crystal Lake in real life and do that. And having this camp gave us that real life opportunity. A lot of what we experienced going into the camp, a natural feeling of, wow, where are we? This place is really cool. Like, what's in this room? What's in this room? Like, we tried to bring that to the film. I mean, it's almost like an autobiography of us, like finding the camp. Some of the steps that Kyle takes to finding the camp are mirrored in real life. We've woven our story into the Never Hike Alone story in many different ways and hidden different ways, because it was so natural and is its own horror movie. I mean, we discovered an abandoned camp, went through no trespassing signs, and ended up in a place where technically we shouldn't have been, to go do something that we probably shouldn't have been doing. But luckily we didn't have any, machete wielding maniacs waiting for us in the forest. We just had this beautiful camp that, we still continue to take care of to this very day.
That's awesome. And that's, one of the things I did want to talk about was the character, Kyle, in that was that you put a survivalist in that situation. Granted, he was a YouTuber, but his whole YouTube, persona and what he did was about surviving and hiking and, stuff like that. And I thought that was really cool. I do have a few comments of people wanting to say a few things. Jerry Wilson was saying, "Hi, Vincent. Thank you for being here."
Pleasure to be here. Katie
as well was saying, "Thank you for coming on, Vincent."
I wish I would have made myself some popcorn, actually.
Oh yeah. Russell is saying they are awesome fan films, Vincent.
Thank you, Russell. Appreciate that.
And he's also saying, "I thought that Jason looked great." And that's the thing, man. Like, that's one of the things too that I feel like Matt and I are always talking about. When you get a new movie with your guy, whether it be Jason, whether it be Michael, whether it be Freddy, whether it be Pinhead, anybody that you're a fan of, the first thing you look at is how that character looks, to whether it's gonna pull you in or take you out, man. And I definitely think you knocked it out of the park with the way that Jason looks in Never Hike Alone.
I'll go as far as saying, if you don't get your boy looking right, just don't even bother making a movie. Honestly,
start
when
there.
you talk about these icons, man. When you're talking Jason, Freddy, Pinhead, or whatever, man, get that look right and start your movie, man. I'm so visual, and I thought he looked great as well. So, absolutely.
It's like driving a nice looking car. You know what I mean? Like, you want to watch a film that that is driven by a nice looking car. Like if it's a janky shit box and you don't like watching it drive, then how are you going to get through the movie watching it try and carry the movie? That's how I felt about Jason Goes to Hell. Like as soon as I saw him, I was like, that's not Jason.
I know.
Jason X is sort of the same thing a little bit. It's like, that's not quite Jason. Like, where did you get this design?
What's up with his head? Why does it look like that? And why is he
talking?
I mean,
you could say the toxic waste. And
he looked like he ate Jason and his head's bubbling.
It was Kane inside of a bodysuit. And so it just sort of like, he looked like the Pillsbury. But it was also the fact that like, he was in a full blue suit, very Michael Myers style. His pants were tucked in. He had like a black Santa belt on. Like it just wasn't I mean, and you talk to some other fans, they love that design. You know what I mean? Like other people love it. They love the fact that the mask is now like his face. It's like sunken into the skin and all that stuff, which,
that could have been cool, but I don't think they did it right. But
if his head wasn't so bulbous, it wasn't like so round. If it didn't stick so far outside the mask, it was still just. And that's, I mean,
it's a cool idea. It is.
My whole aesthetic for Jason is on the screen now, which is really nice. Where I'm like, this is how you make Jason. Like this is the intimidating look. This is the shape that he should be. This is the shape language. This is how he should move. All of that stuff. And I'm 6'3". I'm pretty tall. I'm not as tall as CJ Graham or Derek Mears or Ken Krisinger, or even Ted White. I mean, Ted White was 6'4". These were big guys. Richard Brooker was 6'3". Steve Dash was 5'11". Tom Morgan was about 6'3". So, you got different shapes of Jason. You know what I mean? Like Kane, I think, lists himself as 6'3". But I think when you see him stand next to me in 13 Fanboy, Jason, he's over 6 feet. I'll give him that. But I think that like it's all about the way that he's personified. And honestly, like as many people shit on Friday the 13th Part 8, I think Part 8 is one of Kane's better performances. And I think he looks shape wise. He's in a very like his body's in a good shape. The way that the way the costume fits him is very well fitted and it looks good. I think the same thing in Part 7. Those are the two that he looks great. And I think in Jason Goes to Hell and Jason X, there's too many things wrong with the costume to like really say like, oh, that's a great design. But X obviously elevates it when they put him in Uber Jason. Well,
and the inconsistencies are ridiculous. Like, who sewed up all the holes after Part 7? And
it's
what happened there, man. It was blown up. His bones.
It's amazing. It always amazed me that like
there were some serious.
This franchise could just go like so far away with all of the continuity errors. Never came back with the same look twice, and it seemed like that would be like a no-brainer thing. But now we look back on it and say like, well, thankfully they don't, because we got all these different versions of Jason that are kind of cool. Like, Friday the 13th video game. I mean, you got just look at that. You know what I mean? Like when you're scrolling through the Jasons, they're like, except for maybe, 3 and 4, they're all so different.
Yeah.
And they offer you different variety. And I think, and I always say this about the Friday the 13th world, is that Friday the 13th is a pizza with 12 different slices. And everyone is going to say that they like a different slice. One slice is a margarita. The next one has pineapple on it. The next one's a meat lovers, and go around. There's not one that's really the same as the previous. And so you have this not fractured franchise, but you have a whole collection of franchise lovers who love the franchise as whole, but they love one specific slice of pizza. And you kind of see the different pockets of those fans and what they like about them and the reasons why they do like those films.
Yeah.
And really, you can say the same thing about like the Michael. You would think it'd be very easy to keep that same mask, but he's got a different mask in every one. Sometimes his cover.
That was actually a big rights issue. It was they didn't
blue.
own the rights anymore, which was really weird. Like you would think that, like, how stupid is that? Like, okay, you have Halloween, the franchise, but you're really not going to let the future films use the right mask, and someone's really going to goose up the price, and they're going to ruin the film. You know what I mean? By putting him in this wonky mask, like.
Yeah.
Hell, they even switched the Myers house. It was a Victorian house, Michael. And what was that?
Part 5.
Part 5. And all of a sudden, it's a Victorian style house. You're like, well, okay.
And those are probably
Return of Michael Myers. They put the right mask on the cover, but they didn't put it in the film.
Yes.
Same with Revenge. Yes. Yeah, both 4 and 5, they had the right mask on the cover. I mean, it was deceiving. And those are probably the two that I would say it'd be fair to say, Matt, that we talk about the most is Michael and Jason, right?
Yeah,
for the most part. And it's just like, with Friday and Halloween, I feel like, as different as Friday is from movie to movie, and this is something that I feel like Friday is pretty even keel when it comes to their movies compared to Halloween. I think that Halloween has some great highs, but I think that Halloween's
Some
lows
low
are
lows.
just like the lowest of lows that you could possibly have, and for someone that loves, Michael as much as I do, it's just like, what are you doing to me right now? Like, why are we doing this? And it's just, yeah. And that's one thing, I will always be grateful for Friday the 13th is if it wasn't great, it wasn't horrible until you get to the New Line stuff. You know what I mean? It was just like, yeah, this is kind of okay, but it's not, it's
It
not,
still felt like it was at least coming out of the same world.
yeah,
It felt like it was made with the same pieces, with the same recipe.
yeah.
And then it was like New Line was like you went back to the restaurant, but they changed the menu and all the ingredients. And you're like, you're cooking the same meal, but it tastes way different.
Yeah.
And it's not good.
Yeah, it's
You have not made improvements. I will not be coming back.
Our budget took a hit, so we're gonna get all the cheapest ingredients from the cheapest
but
vendors.
that's the thing. Like their budgets, like Jason Goes to Hell didn't have a bad budget. Like Freddy versus Jason had a great budget, and Jason looks like a giant hobo in that one. And then 2009 had a beautiful budget. A $20 million budget in 2009 is pretty good, especially for shooting, shooting in the forest and stuff like that. Probably the homegrown discount in Texas that they had too. It just what they chose to spend their money on.
Yeah.
And how they choose. And again, like it's a look thing. Like I love Derek Mears, not of the biggest fan of that look. Like it just, and it hurts. Like when I watch it, I'm like, I want to like this, but I don't like the way he looks. And so it's like,
I didn't mind his look in the remake. I really,
a lot of people, you'll probably you'll see elements of that look in Ghost Jason, like in our Jason. It was just like, it's the same element, but let me just twist it just a little bit. Let me just dial back that jacket just a little bit. Let me get this color scheme a little bit more on Friday the 13th color scheme rather than like it was like black, cream, and brown, which was a very odd color choice for Jason, which doesn't seem like that's not his color scheme to me. You got to put some green in there. If there's no green, you're already off to a bad start. And like I said, like Manhattan's the only one that gets away with not having the green because I kind of like that like full black look. But even though I think he was blue, but he looked color.
I was just going to ask you, was he black?
It was blue. I mean, it looked blue to me, and he was constantly
just because he was always wet.
Yeah, he was just constantly soaked. Like that.
But having that dark silhouette all the way through was kind of cool. Like, even though he had the pale white skin.
You can talk to 10 different guys, about Jason and have them make up their own. We've all got a certain image we've got for Jason. You're going to get 10 different Jasons for sure. But yeah, Never Hike Alone's Jason is way up there for me as far as look. And then really the one I just like, I dig 7, and then I dig the 3 and 4. Go with the old school. And like you said, the green in that is awesome. But yeah, as far as Goes to Hell, I don't know what they were doing. And
Russell was saying, "Welcome to Movies and Beyond, Vincent." And yeah, that's from all of us, man. Not just me and Matt, but all these guys in the chat are happy to have you here. Yeah, definitely. Rochelle's also in the chat saying, "What's up, everybody? Welcome, Vincent. What is up, Rochelle? Glad to meet you,
Rochelle."
And yeah, these guys are going, and I am trying to keep up with all of the.
I know
people
that
in
feeling.
The chat.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
James is saying you did a fantastic job on the way Jason looked, big and scary as hell. Definitely. Yeah, I totally.
And I can't not talk about the fights. Like, I mean, you were spot on when you were just talking about the fights. That's the first thing I remember being really impressed with watching Never Hike Alone. They were not. I mean, you hit it spot on. They were not over the top. I wouldn't have liked that. But they weren't boring, and the sound was amazing. You felt the hits. You can tell, and it shows that you're passionate about Friday the 13th in your film. That shows. It shows that you are, a true fan.
Thank you.
But the fights were, something else. I loved it.
I got to give a shout out to Val. She's saying sorry that she's late. She's also one of my moderators. And Val watched 13 Fanboy for the first time today. And she blew up Instagram talking to me about it. Like, why have I not seen this before? Thank you so much. And that's kind of a good segue, because I did want to talk a little bit about 13 Fanboy, because I was a big fan, of that movie. It's just like at a time where, definitely we did have, Never Hike Alone, which I was super grateful for, but it was cool to see all of the characters from, well, not the characters, but the actors from the movies all come together for one thing. And I was very, pleasantly surprised to see that you were a part of that. And that's one thing too that showed me, like, hey, it's not just me. It's not just all of us that think that, Ghost Jason has a place, and so does Vincent DiSanti in Friday the 13th. But I mean, man, you had a pretty cool part in 13 Fanboy.
Yeah, no, it was definitely a dream come true to sort of get that opportunity. It fell on my lap a little bit. There was other people that were cast originally, and things that kind of like scheduling issues and sort of some things popped up. And I was always supposed to do some of the stunt work. At least I was going to come in and sort of like do some stunt work, and which was going to be a lot of fun. But yeah, I want to say like a couple weeks before filming, Deb hit me up and was like, "Hey, we got to get out here. Just make sure you're learning the lines." And and I had always intended to, because I was going to be wearing the mask and acting out a lot of the stuff. And so I was asking her a lot about like, who's playing the fanboy, because I want to be able to sort of like watch some of their films and emulate their body movements. I don't want it to be like, oh, you can tell that's Vinny and then that's so and so. It wasn't until I got to set that she was like, I was like, so how? I was like, I've memorized all the stuff but should I memorize? Like, what else do I have to memorize? She's like, you have to memorize it all. You're going to be the fanboy. And I was like, what? I was like, okay,
God. That's awesome.
Okay. Yeah. I was like, all right, then now I got to take a different approach to this, because I got to be in all these scenes, and I just got to keep tracking where I am in my character. And so it was a lot of fun. It was, and I mean, I was the killer in the original trailer too, that she did the teaser, like with Andrew and Haley, and some other people that she had brought out. It was, I think that the Deb had seen what I did with Never Hike Alone and saw that I had crowdfunded and had a lot of success. And, she had the added bonus where she was able to use her, alumni membership to, recruit other alumni and put together a big cast, but also tell a very personal story about things that actually happen. Not to say that actually happened in real life, but things like that, like getting threatened and having fans stalk you, is a real thing. And so I was just there for Deb. She was a sweetheart to me. After Never Hike Alone release, she had, Andrew and I on as a guest when she was running a podcast. She was big champions of what we did, spread the word. She still, shares her stuff in her Facebook group. So it's, we're really grateful for that opportunity. And then, getting to like fight Kane Hodder, getting to fight CJ Graham, getting to have scenes, get to know Ron Sloan a little bit, actually a lot of it now, but at the time, like Ron had been a big, cheerleader for Never Hike Alone, and we had always like wanted to work together on 13 Fanboy. He's like, hey, I'm looking forward to meeting you on 13 Fanboy, and sort of time got pushed back. We finally got to meet each other, and now we've worked together on 3 different projects. He's lent his voice to Never Hike Alone. He's we worked on the Dylan's New Nightmare project, and I'm sure there's going to be plenty more to come where that came from. So it was cool. I mean, it was just like, and then I was there with my friends too. You know what I mean? Like Andrew Lady was in there. Haley Greenbauer was in there. So the 3 of us who were friends prior to then, that's where I met Nora Hewitt. So it was all just kind of like, it was just a lot of fun. And I got to meet some of my best friends out of it.
That's awesome. And one thing that really stuck out to me in 13 Fanboy, to where it all came together for me and made me just be like, wow, this is absolutely crazy, is when you have that face off with CJ Graham, and, and you're referring to him as Jason, and there's that whole, back and forth about, when, I forget the exact words for it, but you were talking about, it being sad that, I've passed you, that I've progressed. And it's just like, man, like how crazy is that when you think about it from that standpoint, that there could be somebody out there that doesn't see CJ Graham as CJ Graham, sees him as Jason, and, actually thinks that there's that relationship there to where it would fuel a feud like that, man. And it just really, it really stuck with me. Like, man, that is absolutely crazy. Like,
Totally.
That is nuts.
Yeah, and then it was just fun to roll around on a hillside with, till 2 o'clock in the morning, getting tossed around, getting fingers shoved in my mouth, and all this stuff. It was, I don't know, I love it. Like, I just love it. Like, you couldn't have, like, I had no complaints. It was like, how many times did you want me to flip down this hill? How many times do you want me to hit the ground? How many times do you want me to do this? And like, no matter how much I hurt the next day, it was always like totally worth it because I wanted to sell it for the film. And I'm glad that like it's found its audience. It was wild to see it on Showtime, turning on Showtime and then seeing yourself on the poster being like, wow, okay, all right. Like, that's all right. This is cool. How many people are on the cover of Showtime right now? This is friggin' rad.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So there's little pinch yourself moments, and they're life's little victories. You know what I mean? It's like we work really hard at what we do, and when you get to be rewarded with little things like that, it's not necessarily a monetary sort of like, oh, now Vin's been in 13 Fanboy, he's going to live in some mansion somewhere. But it's the story. You get to say like, yeah, one time I got to I got to fight CJ Graham. Okay, Grandpa, time for bed. You know what I mean? Like, no, I really did. I fought a Jason.
Seriously, I did. And I mean, it wasn't just the Jasons, man. Tons of final girls were there, and Dee Wallace. Like, dude, that's so cool. Like, seriously. Yeah, and
Dee was a sweetheart. Shout out to Tracy Savage and Judy Aronson. They were my first two scene partners. We took that scene very seriously. The one, like the bonus credits, not the bonus credit scene, but the one that shows up later on in the movie where you actually see what happens to Tracy Savage. It was me and it was me, Tracy, and Judy, and we got together and rehearsed the whole thing because there was a lot of dialogue in that. There's a lot of moving around. There was a lot of blocking. So we wanted to get that down pat. And like Tracy hadn't acted in 2 decades.
Wow.
I mean, she had been doing, Tracy, for those who don't know, transitioned into news broadcasting, and she was a news anchor in Los Angeles for almost 20 years. And then, retired from that, is now teaching. Judy had been in things from here and there, but she was sort of like, it's been a bit like, I got to get back into the swing of things. And I was like, I've never acted in anything really other than this. So let's give it a shot. Like, other than like Friends fan films and like Friends, like fun films, like, and I've done a lot of man in suit acting, but I took a little bit of theater in college, and I've done voice acting, and I've done other things. So I just sort of was like, I'm just going to apply everything that I know about directing actors, and I'm just going to try to, be as natural as possible. And plus, I'm just playing me. I'm not playing a character. I'm being me. And then all of a sudden I'm me as if I was crazy. So like, how hard is that going to be to push? So yeah, honestly, there were 2 separate shooting windows. It was like maybe 6 months apart, each was like 2 weeks at a time. So it was, we shot in Ruidoso, New Mexico, and surrounding area. And it was just a beautiful town. It was a beautiful opportunity. And, I got to see lots of friends shine. Haley being the lead in the film was really, really cool because I had met Haley through a friend of mine, Ben Meredith, who was a cinematographer on the first Never Hike Alone. And just giving the fact that I was like, oh, Deb, if you're looking for an actress, here's Haley Greenbauer. I just worked with her on this short film that I did with my buddy Ben. And then Ben became the director of photography for the rest of the film. So I really felt like one of the cool things about Womp Stomp Films is we did Never Hike Alone, but what I'm really proud of is the fact is that as we start to get involved with other projects, you see the Womp Stomp team names, you see familiar names popping up. And the reason why you see a lot of our projects have those, hit a certain level, I guess you could say, is because of those people and the fact that we're able to keep them close. It's like a band, you know what I mean? Like we all play different parts and we all get together, and it's not always the same ensemble, but you get them enough as together and we can really bring a lot of positives to a project.
Definitely. Oh yeah, man. That's freaking awesome. Mike Codrington is in the chat saying, hi, Ma, Rochelle. What's up, Mike? I know Mike very well. He's a good friend of mine. What's up, man? I'm glad you finally made it in. Wayne Turner's also in the chat saying, hi all, it's 10:43 a.m. Monday here in Sydney, Australia. Sorry I'm late. I was out hiking alone.
Not a good idea.
No worries. Good.
Don't you know, Wayne?
There's a good Actually, they might be South African, but I think it's Australia. There's a good fan film crew out there that makes a lot of Freddy. I think they're the ones who did Michael versus Freddy, Evil Emerges.
Yeah.
That one that has
Oh,
like
the
50
Jason
million
versus
views.
Freddy. Yeah.
Jason
Or
versus,
Jason
oh no,
versus
Jason versus
Michael.
Michael. Yeah,
Yeah.
Evil Emerges. I think they're Australian based. They're either Aussies or they're South African. Sorry for screwing up both.
I really
can't
enjoyed
tell
that.
it.
I enjoyed that film.
Yeah, we actually watched that on the show one day, and I mean, we just had a blast with it, you know.
Mhm.
And actually, that was the same night that we watched another fan film that you had something to do with, that you played a part in. I know that you didn't create it, but it was called The Spirit of Haddonfield.
Yeah.
So that was something else too that we saw.
Mhm.
Saw your name pop up on there, and I was just like, "Whoa!" I said, "Vince DiSanti's playing the Shape." You
Yep.
know, and it was just like that's something that we enjoyed very well too, and we got a kick out of the end of it because it was such a good movie. Like we had a great time. It had great tension in it. You know, the tension was very good in it. But just that kind of that look as Michael's walking away at the end and the cops have come for her, and it's like he looked over and you did everything but just throw your middle finger up. Like, I swear to God, I was like, Matt, it's almost like you can insert middle finger here.
Gotcha.
Look what I did to you. You know,
Yeah.
you shouldn't have ran. And it was great. We had a great time with that one as well, too.
Playing Michael is a lot of fun. I've done it 3 times. I did it for Spirit. I did it for something called The Face of Michael Myers, which is something that's a little bit less seen because it was an unfunded crowdfund project that honestly was a crime against humanity. That the costume that we had with the mask and then the story and the team behind it, I think really would have done a great job. It's the same team behind the trailer that we released that people were really excited about, the Jason versus the Wolfman. Same team where I got to play Jason in that. And then I did another one with Cortland Gordon and Jimmy Champagne called Happy Halloween. Which I'm going to take 1,000% credit for saying, you know what we should call this? Happy Halloween.
Nice.
And the way it starts off, it's brutal too, which is more of akin to, it's a side quest in the Halloween Kills timeline in that world. So the future world. And like Halloween Kills was sort of set in a world after Michael had actually died. Which was going to be pretty cool. And then obviously Spirit in Haddonfield was sort of in its own sort of metaverse in a way. I think it was actually in the H2O verse, which was the thing, because I believe at the end you see that what's his name is
Josh Hartnett.
Josh Hartnett is her dad.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we had talked about, you know, and I've talked to all 3 of those filmmakers about doing continuations. And I think Jimmy and Cortland did do a continuation for theirs. But yeah, I really like, check out all 3 of those out. If you haven't seen the other 2, Face of Michael Myers, which was done by Stephen Wolf, Hawthorne House Productions, and then Jimmy Champagne, I believe, is hosting Happy Halloween, which again, that was directed by Cortland Gordon. Cortland is a little genius. He was Mark Hill in Never Hike in the Snow. You're gonna catch him. Talk to Me is coming out on July 28th.
Can't wait.
Cortland had a lot to do with that film, actually.
Nice.
And you will see him as an extra in that opening scene. He's behind the couch. If you have the new Fangoria, he's in the Fangoria. So keep an eye out for Mark Hill. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm actually trying to see that Thursday night this coming week, because they'll usually release them, you know, at nighttime the night before. Really looking forward to Talk to Me for sure. And I do want to talk a little bit about Never Hike in the Snow too. I'm definitely, you know, a big fan of that one as well, where Tom Matthews came back, and that, you know, serves as kind of a prequel to Never Hike Alone, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
And it was just, man, like, there's so many scenes, you know, that get me, but I think that the shotgun scene for me was just crazy. Like, it looks so good.
Yeah.
You know, the way that the music was, the way that the lights were flashing, you know, kind of similar to the end of Never Hike Alone when he's in the ambulance, you know, when we're watching that, and the way that you guys put that together, like, there's so much, I hate to keep using the word tension, but it's just like, oh my God, this is crazy.
Yeah, no,
You know
it's definitely, that was definitely like one of the missions of Snow was, it's sort of a sandwich with the meat on the outside of the bun. It's two meat pieces with, you know, with bun in the middle. which it still has its moments in the middle too. But again, it was a deconstructed, cop drama. It wasn't a Friday the 13th film. It was how does the first question is, can you escape Jason? And then the second question is, that was Never Hike Alone. Never Hike in the Snow is what happens when you don't escape Jason? What does it look like in Crystal Lake when somebody goes missing? What is the fallout? Like, how is this crazy situation allowed to go on? And that's what we wanted to show everybody. I think, I don't know if people remember, and a lot of people who tuned in late when they just see, Never Hike in the Snow, they're like, is this a prequel? When does this fall? What is this doing? Well, Never Hike in the Snow has had the unfortunate sort of existence of existing without its counterparts. It was supposed to be one of 4 episodes. It was supposed to be Never Hike in the Snow, Never Hike Again, Jason Takes Crystal Lake, and The Final Hike. But when we completed Never Hike in the Snow, we went right into the pandemic. Like literally 2 weeks later, I flew up to Portland to go work on the next round of Jason Rising shooting. We had just finished Never Hike in the Snow. That was going into editorial. And the next thing you know, the world's shutting down. And, our ideas to jump in right into crowdfunding and start funding for Never Hike Again got curbed. And then we couldn't film. And then filming was 3 times as expensive. And, all these other factors were getting in the way. And by the time we got around to doing it again, Never Hike in the Snow has sort of had to exist with this huge cliffhanger, kind of exist in this world of people not knowing where it fits because it doesn't have the other pieces to tell you where it fit. So that's why it's like so nice to get into Never Hike Alone 2, because now people are going to see where this story was always meant to go. They see that it actually wasn't too much of a cliffhanger. Like it is a cliffhanger for that episode, but if we had done it the way we originally planned to do it, a few weeks later, you would have got the answer. People have had to wait 3 years for this answer, which, it's been hard to sit on it. It's been tough knowing that there's a story there and you want to complete the story and you want to finish telling the story, but you don't have the pieces yet. So that's sort of like what is just very nice that, Never Hike Alone 2 is coming out this year. And when people go back and they're like, okay, I got to freshen up for Never Hike Alone 2, and they watch either the ghost cut to see it all. I mean, watch the ghost cut because that leads you right into where you need to be, or go back and watch them individually and just take them for what they are. And then watch Never Hike Alone 2 and all the unanswered questions, all the questions that came up in our YouTube videos, like all that stuff, one by one, we answer those questions, not in a way that like they look at camera and they say, well, this is the answer you're looking for. It's just like you naturally come across the answers throughout the film. And there's just this satisfying, like, oh, now I understand, and sort of making sense of everything the best we can. And then, putting the series to bed, which was always the intention.
So I want to be on. So Never Hike 2 will continue with Never Hike Alone, like right from that one, because
sort of. It actually there's an intersection in the film, and the intersection is the ambulance scene from the first movie.
Okay.
Everybody wanted to know after the first Never Hike Alone, how did Tommy find Kyle? So that's
solid question.
It's a solid question. And you need to sort of know who Tommy is and what he's going through by the time he gets to Kyle. So Never Hike Alone 2 starts the morning of. The morning that happens is when the film starts for us. So while Kyle is off in the forest filming his confessional where he says it's day 2 and another beautiful one like that. I was, down by the river and I found this trail and I'm going to go follow it. Well, that's the same that's going on at the same time that Tommy is having that dream that we see in the Never Hike Alone 2 preview. And when he wakes up, the story starts there at that time of the day, where we see Tom go throughout his day in the life. What does Tommy do these days? He does certain activities, and then he goes to work. And then while he's at work, we bring you back up to speed with Dr. Diana Hill, who, is still struggling with the loss of her son from Never Hike in the Snow. So we bring back that character. And you have all these characters that have been, and then we also bring back Rick Colon. And Rick Colon is also dealing with the fact that he hasn't solved the crime yet. It's 3 months later, and he doesn't have a single lead, and he can't figure out what happened. And everyone is frustrated by it, and everyone is sort of haunted by it. Everyone is sort of like Tommy is haunted by Jason. Diana is haunted by the fact that her son is still missing. And Rick is haunted by the fact that people are dying in his town and there's nothing he can do about it. And he has no evidence to say it is that it's Tommy, because he really wants it to be Tommy. He really wants to take his revenge on Tommy. And it isn't until this character of Kyle MacLeod stumbles into their lives. And I think what's so nice about Never Hike Alone 2 is again, we're leading you down this road of these characters that are living their own lives. They're in their own world. Things are good for the most part. Like, life isn't bad, maybe except for Diana, who's actually struggling a lot because she's lost her child. But all of a sudden, like, everything, like how much everything is about to change when they get that call to go find Kyle. You know, when they go out into the woods and they find the lost hiker, and you know what led to those moments, and where everybody was when, you know, Kyle was found, and what that means to certain people. And I would say that that's the first act of Never Hike Alone. And then the second act is, you know, basically what happens after that ambulance pulls away. You know, what's going to happen now? And that's Jason takes Crystal Lake. So I think just from the title, you can figure out what happens. Jason comes into town and he's like, you guys effed with me for the last time, and now I'm unleashed. The monster's out of its cage and it's coming for you. You know, and the final hike is that last trip to camp where, you know, the surviving heroes have reunited and are, you know, trying to figure out how to destroy Jason. And it's through Kyle's adventure that is the catalyst, sort of like in Star Wars, the way that Luke Skywalker's, you know, introduction into learning about the Force and being pulled into the storyline is the catalyst for things to change. You know, and it requires the fact that, like, Tom has the knowledge of the old. He's the Obi-Wan. He's the wise guru there. And then you have the passion and the, you know, and the fire of, you know, our mother character, the Dr. Diana Hill. She's a little bit of a Princess Leia, where, you know, she's not necessarily in need of being rescued, but she is, you know, fighting for something that, you know, is eating her up on the inside. And, you know, she wants answers and she can't get them. And she is the true victim. She represents, you know, the people in Crystal Lake who for decades have been losing their loved ones and not getting answers for it. So she's just one in a long line of these people. Like, you know, just like Leia, she loses her family when Alderaan's blown up, and she's been fighting this fight, and she's, you know, she hasn't made, you know, the type of headway that she's desired. But when she's partnered with, you know, the old wise, you know, wizard, a space wizard, and you know, the young buck who's just, you know, stumbled onto this, but has a talent for, you know, fighting Jason, that the three of them at least can give themselves a fighting shot. And it's going to require all three of them working together, because if anyone were to go it alone, they might not make it out alive. And that's what makes Kyle so special, is the fact that, like, he did go one-on-one with Jason and he did survive, but barely. So could he do it again? And I think that that's sort of his arc in the film, is like, do I really want to get involved with this again? Because I already survived my movie. I don't want to come back for the sequel. It actually used to be a line in the film, but I pulled it out because it was too on the nose.
Oh man.
But it's sort of that kind of feeling. So, you know, I think that sort of breaks it down as far as like what fans should expect. And in the meantime, like, Jason's on a rampage. You know what I mean? Jason has sort of, I think if everyone's watching,
I like hearing that.
You know, that Jason sort of he's lost everything. Like, his anonymity, his, you know, his ability to stay hidden is gone because Kyle has escaped with that GoPro. And so if Kyle is out there with proof that Jason exists, then all of a sudden they're coming for Jason. And so Jason has no more where to hide. They're not going to stop until they find him. So Jason's bringing the fight to them. And also Jason's just pissed off. Like, Jason's really
I like
pissed,
that as well, Vinny.
because he lost. He's lost for the first time in 20 years. And all of a sudden it's all his fault. So now he's angry, and he's not going to stop until, you know, he gets his revenge on Kyle, or gets his revenge on Tommy, and anyone else who gets in between him and them, he's going to take them out. So it's definitely a much bigger movie than the previous two. Like, the other two movies were isolated characters, you know, all of those things. You know, I think we have like at least 20 characters in the film. You know, not mentioning some of the people that are going to be in it, but, you know, there's a lot of deaths. There's double-digit deaths. And, you know, you're going to see some of the things that, like, one of the things I'm proud about is the way that, like, it intertwines with Never Hike Alone 1 and Never Hike in the Snow, where, especially with Never Hike Alone 1, because there's times that overlap in both those stories where kind of like the two characters are like two ships passing in the night with Tommy and Kyle. And so you kind of get to see like how close they came to sort of meeting and, them being around each other. And you also get sort of some bonus looks at Never Hike Alone of like scenes we didn't show you for Never Hike Alone, like little other snippets that never made it into the movie type thing. And I will say this, I do want to put this on people's radars, is that like we took a little bit of an Evil Dead 2 approach with the way that we approached the ambulance scene, since we're seeing it from Tommy's perspective. And the film I made in 2017 was made by, a very capable filmmaker who did a very good job, but also sort of one that's learned a lot of lessons since then and sort of wanted to take another crack at that scene in a way. And there's a new element to it. And it sort of changes the dialogue just a little bit here and there. It's like very close, but not very much the same. But some of the things are the same, but you kind of see that like, this is the idea we wanted to do, but couldn't afford. But now it's going to make more sense of why these things happen the way they happen. It just so happened that you saw the first movie all from Kyle's perspective. Now you're going to see the second movie from Tommy's perspective. And unfortunately, we couldn't get the same exact ambulance. It's very, very close, but there's like little logistical things of like, spoiler alert, there's a shot of like, remember the dangling like CB radio? Mm-hmm. Well, we didn't have one from the ceiling, hanging from the ceiling this time. It was like on the dash. So like instead of it hanging from the ceiling, it's like sitting on a dash type stuff. So like there's little things like that, little inconsistencies, which is kind of funny because it kind of matches. But I kind of say it's like Evil Dead 2 to Evil Dead 1, where you see that improvement in production value and storytelling. And then you get to see things that you didn't get to see in Never Hike Alone 1 in the ambulance scene. We always cut to almost like another opposite perspective. Fans know what's going on inside the ambulance, right? But they don't know what happened outside the ambulance. Where was Tommy coming from? What is Tommy looking for when he's looking around the forest, and what happens outside of the ambulance? Like we saw it all from the perspective of being inside the ambulance and staying around Kyle, but now we get to see what happens outside of the ambulance. Like what did Tommy and Jason's fight look like? What happened to Axel? What happened to Denny? And it's all told from a different perspective. So I think fans who are like really big fans of Never Hike Alone are going to watch this scene and be like, oh my, like mind blown, like, wow, like now a lot of like, and then the way it connects to Never Hike Alone 1, even though we have different actors for Axel and Denny, you're gonna just sort of see the way the two scenes sort of make a super scene in a way. We can't cut them together because we have different actors, so we covered it in this one to kind of recover what we needed from the old one and then do it with our new actors and then give people a little bit more.
That's awesome because I never even thought of that, for the simple fact that you do only see it from one perspective, that scene, and it's, man, that's awesome. Like I cannot wait for this one. You have no idea how much we're definitely looking forward to Never Hike Alone 2. Oh my goodness.
Let me ask, and I don't think I'm alone here, but where the boy who was in the trailer for 2, where did you find this amazing? I am drawn to him, man. He absolutely crushed that trailer.
I'm very, very proud. His name is Horror Stevie. He's a cosplayer. He's on Instagram. Horror Stevie and I met in 2018. He was a young cosplayer, and he was like the first young cosplayer to make a Ghost Jason costume. So to me, that was very special to see that I touched some, kid from the middle of the country who I'd never met before, who was a big fan of our movie, and his parents were like very gracious and kind, Steven and Lisa. And I had met him at a Horror Hound 2018. We became fast friends in a way. Like, I was very humbled by, the way that he sort of took to the movie, and we've stayed in touch over the years. Just, I check up on him. I see how he's doing. I see how he's, I see him in other fan films, and his parents would always be like, if there's ever a room for him in one of the films, we'd love to put him in one of the movies. And I said, of course, like if I can ever think of anything, but let me think of something. And so when I needed a young Tommy Jarvis, I thought about Steve, and Stevie was probably, he's like 8 or 9 now. And he just sort of had, and he's about that size. Like he looked like a young Corey Feldman, and he had long hair. And I went, well, he's got this long hair, and
dude, I think he killed it, man. Like,
no, he really did. And so, he's got maybe a little bit of acting experience here and there, but nothing ever like that. And I just said, Stevie, I'm going to give you these lines, and if you can just memorize these lines, the role's yours. And he memorized them, and he gave the same performance every time. And I think he stuttered once. And he got pulled into the water. He did it all. He did his own stunts. He did everything, we asked of him, and he delivered an amazing performance, which is like what I was really excited
He
about.
absolutely did.
He was a little creepy. I was like, you're like a little Danny Torrance.
Kudos to him, man.
You know what I mean? Like Danny Torrance meets Corey Feldman. I love this like little mixture, and he just sold it. And he just, he looked so like innocent and cute, and like
he did.
You don't want to see him get, you didn't want to see him get pulled into the water, but you're just like, oh, this like. But that scene was meant to be this, Tommy's life sort of is like encompassed in that first scene. First, like seeing young Tommy, who he was before he met Jason, seeing Tommy as he is now, this elder statesman who has, sort of lived with Jason all of his life. And then when he wakes up and he goes through that panic attack, that he's still very much that John Shepard Jason. That is, not John Shepard Tommy, where he's still be dealing with the PTSD. He's still dealing with the hallucinations, and he is just as cursed as Jason is. And he's just as cursed as everyone else. And he's been living with this curse for a long time. And he hasn't had, any peace with that since his young self met that murderer.
No, poor Tommy's a scarred individual, man.
He is. And so, and that, and that was the other big part of this movie, was telling Tommy's story and saying, how does this, lifetime of PTSD, like finally being able to face it. And, hopefully, for Tommy, find resolution and close the chapter on Jason once and for all, so he could finally live in peace.
Oh man, yeah, that's something too. When we watched the trailer for the first time, Matt and I were talking. Is that little Tommy? That's got to be little Tommy right there? Like, it looks just like him. Like it's great.
Yeah,
definitely great. Do want to say what's up to Robert Wolfman, who's stopping by to say what's up. What's up, Robert? That's my guy right there. Robert's a cool dude.
What's up, Robert?
But yeah, man. So October 13th, correct?
October 13th, 2023, Friday the 13th in October. The last time there was a Friday the 13th in October, that was the year that we debuted Never Hike Alone. So it feels right. Feels like definitely. Here we are. We're back, on the date we're supposed to be on. So we're really excited about that.
Vinny, are you a chef on the side or just a massive food lover? Or you can explain everything with food. It's just impressive. Guys, you just take two burgers, man, and you know.
I don't know. I'm just good at metaphors. I'm good at like analogies. You try
to
visualize.
I got it, man. I just wondered.
I wish I was a better cook. My dad's a great cook, but I'm not the greatest cook in the world.
Too.
Yeah, not so much.
Man, I'm stoked about
fry
this.
A burger like nobody's business, though.
And I gotta say, you have. Because look how long it's been since we've, had Jason on the big screen. There's, as much as we love him, there's going to be some people that are going to drop off. But I guarantee, the number of people that you've brought back to the franchise it's got to be astronomical. And I know myself and we all thank you, my friend.
Thank you
for doing what you do.
Yeah. I looked at Never Hike Alone on YouTube today, and it's 4 million views. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? That's 4 million.
Our dead meat kill count has like 8.
That's crazy.
Which it's like, just can you guys come and watch the movie too?
It's like 4 million.
Can I get some more of those plays, James?
Right. That's
send a little bit more my way.
That'll just show you though how many people are invested in this, because people
keep coming back to it. It's a film you can watch again and again, right? Which I think, and trust me, I've watched it a million friggin' times, but like, it's still entertaining enough that even when I go back and watch this film that I know front to back, it's still entertaining to watch. I get taken back to a lot of like, I remember the day we made that scene, or well, if people only knew that just off camera this was going on or that was going on, or like, thank God that thing didn't fall. Like, right after we got the shot, that thing fell down. It was like, you know what I mean? There's a lot of stuff like that.
That's a formula of a good Friday the 13th needs, is rewatchability. We rank a lot of movies on here. And I'll say hands down, that's probably the number one thing I rank them on is their rewatchability, and yeah, Never Hike Alone absolutely has that.
So there is, when you're talking about scenes, there is one scene that I want to put up on the screen, because this is something from the original Never Hike Alone, the original, that really got to me, and I'd love to talk to you about it, because it's one that I've always been curious about. It's when Kyle is running from Jason, before he cuts his leg, the way that you shot Jason.
Yeah.
I definitely like to talk about that. So everybody in the chat knows it's only going to take a minute to throw this up, but I definitely want to take a look at this part. I already had set it up here for us, and I'd like to talk a little bit about this one too. Especially this right here.
A lot of people love that shot.
Look, man. If I went through one time, yeah. So that's the scene in particular that I definitely wanted to talk to you a little bit about, because it's one that really stuck out to me the first time I watched it. You have the slow motion close up, which I think is excellent. How did you shoot that? That second part of that to where he's walking forward like that. What did you guys do?
Really, it's just we had a great location in Malibu, California. That's the trail behind my house that I used to live at. JD March was shooting there. He was shooting with the Sony FS7, shooting high frame rate, probably I think 120 frames or 60 frames per second. We had a mandate on set when shooting Jason. Every time we shot Jason, that the camera was always positioned below his chest. Never get up to Jason's height. Always stay down, down low, always looking up. A friend of mine, Austin, who was he was one of the pre-visualization artists for the new Godzilla movies. He was saying, who was I talking to? We talked about it later on. We sort of did it by accident, but it was, who's the director of the second Godzilla movie that Legendary did? Not Michael Dougherty. Mike Dougherty. And Mike Dougherty used to say that anytime you shoot a monster, it should break the top of the frame. So you never want to see headroom. You want him to be here. So it looks so big. And that's how they treated Godzilla. Godzilla was always breaking the frame. They couldn't fit him in the entire frame because he was just too big and too monstrous. You never shot him wide. You shot him up close to give him impending power. And so that was sort of the same type of strategy we were doing here. We're always trying to make Jason look impending, imposing, powerful, and scary. And there's a combination of working on a walk that kept Jason in a certain line, that kept him from making certain movements with his head or with his body that made him feel less scary. And the fact that, even though Kyle is running as fast as he can, he is sprinting, and all of a sudden you cut to Jason and he's just moving through the forest. Yeah. It's like the nothing coming from nowhere. You know what I mean? Keep running. Eventually I'm going to catch you. I'm not in a rush. I know I'm going to. And the thing for me is that Jason knows shortcuts. Jason knows the quickest point to any path. Kyle may be taking the longest route around because he's following the trail, but there may be a little cut path that Jason's going to take. And if you notice, Jason doesn't come down the path. He comes from a side path. And he almost beat him there anyway without him falling down. So you see that Jason wouldn't have been very far behind. That one shot of him pulling back was the only one that we shot in real time. So a lot of people like that. And you see the speed. Now you see Jason walking, and he's not running, but he's got a long stride. And those long strides, he's powering through the forest. Now he's like a locomotive. So the whole that sequence is all about creating Jason the freight train. It's just chugga 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 chugga, chugga, and then it's starting to move, and it's starting to move, and it's starting to get more intense. And so that's the intensity that we wanted to build up with that scene. And a pat on my back. That's the one scene in the film that I cut. That was my cut. I was trying to explain it to the editors what I wanted. And I said, let me just do it because I know exactly what I want here, how I want it to bounce back and forth. That little thing where when Jason steps, all of a sudden he zips forward type thing, which isn't meant to be that he morphed or did anything, the video game stuff, but it was just a nice fancy cut that he was pacing through the forest, and that, just seeing the machete come by camera, you know what I mean? Just again, it's impending. This thing is Jason is dangerous and he's coming. And that was
Walking
sort of
with purpose. He's
honestly, that is my favorite scene, I think,
You
in
know?
that movie. That whole sequence of him
It's
on the trail finding Jason, a lot of it was built out of that scene. Like that was one of the original ideas, like back when it was just nothing. So to see that scene kind of graduate into the movie and then even graduate within itself to become what it became, was I think one of my proudest moments, because it took us a long time to get that scene. I talk about it, I think, in the either in the commentary or in the behind the scenes, but I talk about how challenging that film was, or that scene was. It took us like 3 or 4 trips to get everything that we needed. And there's a couple things on our YouTube channel where you'll see like our previs pass. You'll see what we had shot,
Mhm.
and then you'll see sort of what we had left to shoot, and then you'll hear it with Friday the 13th music, and then you'll see it with like stunt actors, like Kyle, the producer, is like Kyle McLeod for a couple of shots, and like I'm not wearing the mask fully, like I don't have the hood on, I just got the things. And they're really kind of like low rent versions of all the shots, just to say like, I think it's this angle, I think it's this angle, I think it's this angle. And that's what we use to go out and reshoot and say, now we have to get these with the real elements. And that's when like our DPs took over and like, did the due diligence to make it look even more cinematic.
I mean, the first time I saw that, believe me, huge Jason fan. I love Jason. He's Batman to me. You know what I mean? But I'm like, that's fucking horrifying. Literally the way that he's walking through there, I'm like, you put yourself in that situation, man, I'm probably just falling on the ground, in all honesty. It's like, I know how this story goes. You know what I mean? No matter how fast I run, this dude's got me.
Yeah, and there's a little bit of that in Never Hike in the Snow too, after Mark gets shot with the bow and arrow. And Jason
Another
kind of,
great
and again,
scene.
it's that slow motion just coming at you. Like we realized that that's just a combination of elements that work really, really well together. So we use that a lot. And I believe we use it in Never Hike Alone 2 a few times as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's just one of the scenes. There's a lot of good scenes in this movie, but I knew that if I had a chance to talk to you, I wanted to at least show you exactly, what I was talking about. But the first time I saw that, man, like if I were to ever cut anything out of this movie to say this scene, watch this scene, that's the one, that I'm throwing up there. Like this
I
is
agree. It's the only scene that we have clipped out of the movie that's in our channel that I probably should share it more often, because it's just like, this is Never Hike Alone. This is what makes Never Hike Alone tick. It's this scene. This is what it's all based on.
it's you've never seen Jason from that angle before either. You know what I mean? Usually,
Maybe. I don't think that, but I don't. Yeah, and that's the thing. I don't think they ever sort of like. I don't know if they ever did that. You know what I mean? Like they've seen it. Like it's funny. Like a lot of the Friday the 13th, the cinematography is not much to like write home about.
right.
You know what I mean? I would say if part 3, I don't know. Part 2 has a lot of really great moves. Part 3 is like kind of hit and miss with the 3D because they try to overdo it. Part 4 is done well. Part 6 is done well, but like a lot of them just sort of cinematically just don't. Jason is always shot in weird angles. Like you don't see like big, giant, intimidating angles a lot.
Right.
I think it's a lot of like standard coverage.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's why that stuck out to me so much. It's like, believe me, I've watched all the Friday the 13th so many times. And the only time that I've seen him, really head on like that, getting that perspective. And I just looked at it like, this is absolutely freaking horrifying. That's perfect. That's good. It's great. I love that. And I mean, Matt, we've talked about that scene a couple times together too. Like, dude, he's like a freaking bus going through there. Like there is nothing getting in his way. And it's just, to me, it gave Jason, that look and my perspective of what I would think that, Jason should be. And it was just like, man, I'll take that, 100 times, as many times as they want to show that to me.
He's walking with
sure.
purpose like a boss is what he's doing. Like,
Yeah, kind of like CJ Graham in 6 when he went into the water like a boss.
Yeah,
that
what I mean? The scene. Yeah, even the scene where Doug Bradley is walking after the paintballer. There's just scenes of like Jason walking through the forest, in part 6 that I think really show that like, and he's just walking. He's got that heavy footstep. You know what I mean?
Right.
People are like, where'd the stomps come from? It's like they came from those movies. They gave him big footsteps. They came from the game where he had big footsteps.
Did you say Doug Bradley?
Mm-hmm.
Doug Bradley was in part 6?
Doug Bradley is the original Jason in part 6. He's the one in the paintball scene. And you can kind of tell he's a little bit more portly than CJ Graham is. When he gets shot with the paintball. Yeah, that's Doug Bradley.
Wow, I did not know that.
Bradley got fired, and then CJ got hired.
Bradley got fired. Wow, I did not know that.
Yeah.
I'm a big Doug Bradley fan, man. Wow.
I knew that the first actor got fired, but I didn't know it was Doug. We're talking Pinhead Doug Bradley.
No, that you're thinking about. Who are you thinking of?
Oh, I thought you meant Doug Bradley as Pinhead Doug Bradley.
Wait, is it? I think Doug Brad. No, the first AD. Wait. Who plays Pinhead? I don't think it's Doug Bradley that plays Pinhead.
Oh, Doug Bradley absolutely plays Pinhead.
Wait,
You know
hold
that.
on. Let me see if I got this name right.
Because I knew the first guy got fired and they replaced CJ Graham. It was like
Sorry,
after
guys, I didn't
almost
mean
like
to throw us into something off topic. I just heard
It's
Doug
good.
Bradley as Jason. I'm like, what?
it was
Wait, hold
almost like one of the first couple days that they, got CJ Graham in there.
Dan Bradley.
Dan Bradley.
Sorry, Dan
Oh,
Bradley.
okay. No worries.
My bad. All right,
All
you're
good.
right. I was like,
All
no,
good.
what are you talking about? No, Dan Bradley. Dan Bradley was a stunt coordinator, who he actually he's actually one of the he's a second unit director. I think he directed a remake of Red Dawn. He ended up becoming like one of the most successful first ADs and stunt coordinators and second unit directors of all time. Like if you look up Dan Bradley, it's Dan Bradley. Yeah. If you look up Dan Bradley's IMDb, like that dude has worked on so many different films, and to think that like he got fired off of Friday the 13th Part 6, and then after that his career like shot through the roof. So he did just fine. But yeah, he's just more of a he looked like more of a Leatherface type actor.
And he's in the paintball scene.
And he's in the paintball scene.
Yeah.
You can see it. He's just a little bit more portly.
Okay.
He's a little bit more like, extra meat there than,
Yeah.
CJ, who was built like a Terminator.
Yeah.
Yeah. That too. And then, when we were talking about Never Hike in the Snow before, I got to talk a little bit about the axe scene to the mouth. I mean, that's freaking insane. Like that was another one too, that really stuck out to me. I don't have a clip of that one, unfortunately. But I'm just, when you see it, it looks so good. And I'm sure that a lot went into making that happen.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that's kind of something you've never really seen, in a Friday the 13th movie for it to be that detailed. And I mean, they had to have done a ton of work to make that look as good as it did.
Yeah, Nora Hewitt and her wife Rachel worked very hard on that. Same thing with Cody Wilkins, who built the blood rigs for it. To the entire PA team that had to shovel all the snow that was into that shop because it had melted from that area where we wanted to shoot it. So we literally had to lay Cortland down, lay the lines. We had scooped up, we had shoveled and saved snow that was in the shade, piled it in the shade in the parking lot. And then when it was time to shoot Cortland, and all the tubes were working because we tested it with water. We were trucking in snow through buckets, just getting a bucket of snow, putting it by Cortland, going back, and people were just running back and forth with buckets, handing them to me, and we were fitting Cortland into it. And then it was so we brought the camera all the way up to the top, and we said, let us know when we reach the edge of the frame. Figured that out, did the shot, did the whole thing. We only really had one shot at it. You know what I mean? So we had 2 shots at it because we start so close. And so it was if there was more blood there, it wasn't that big deal. And we got that shot. And then the more we went on, we just kept throwing snow until we had it all cleared in by the time Jason drags Mark away. And in fact, that scene was the original ending of Never Hike Alone. The first one that we were going to screw up. Yeah, the first Never Hike Alone that we ever shot that we never showed anybody ended with the Kyle character being axed to death, not in the mouth, but actually there was a version that he was supposed to get the axe to the mouth and get dragged off into the woods. That's where that scene originally came from. I repurposed it for Never Hike in the Snow. So that was, and I was always like, man, I wish we would have been able to do that scene. And so I came up with snow so I could go do that scene. I went, it's even better because we're doing it in the snow, and that's going to make this big blood angel, and it's going to be even better. So we actually saved it for the right moment. We put it in the right sort of context, which took this cool kill, the concept of putting an axe into a mouth and splitting the jaw, gave it even more oomph because we were putting blood into the snow and giving fans, again, we're in this to make Friday the 13th fans happy. They wanted to see Jason in a snow setting. They wanted to see blood in the snow. So
yeah,
we gave him blood in the snow.
And that's something else too I wanted to talk about, because you always there's a lot of times where it's just I wonder what these guys would look like in the snow.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's always summer with Jason. It's what does this guy do in the wintertime? What's Camp Crystal Lake look like in the wintertime? And that was given to it's like never hiking the snow. I'm like, are you serious? In the snow? We're finally going to the snow. That's what I'm talking about. And it was everything you would expect it to be.
Yeah, and that was and we wanted to. I mean, I wish we could have done more. I mean, obviously, like if we had planned to do like a feature or anything like that, that would have been nice. But we knew what we had. What we were doing was very high level and very costly, and we just wanted to make that count. Versus like a couple like piddly like, we were spreading the money out between a bunch of kills in the snow. We were like, no, let's just do one that goes like full on. And then obviously like having like the dead head mark, which is another favorite part of the movie for me, which was sort of like my Hereditary sort of call out, where it's like you go from like the good face to like the bloody face, and sort of a shocking jump cut to be like, no, now this child is dead. The 17-year-old kid is gone, and not only gone, but he got brutally murdered. Like he didn't even get like a nice death. He got like a hard, horrible death where he got his jaw chopped off, and then he choked to death on his own blood.
It's crazy. And then we also, when we watched the Never Hike Alone on the channel, we did watch the ghost cut. So we watched the whole thing, and the little music video at the beginning, like it's like a music montage at the beginning too. That was fantastic too, because you got to see Jason from yet another perspective. Something that you don't normally see.
Yeah, seeing it from Jason's eyes.
Yeah.
How does it look? What does a stalk and kill look like from Jason's eyes? But also sort of teasing this feeling of like there's something wrong with Jason. Yeah. He doesn't look very happy to be doing any of this stuff. He looks like he's struggling, and that he looks like this isn't bringing him joy. And this really, it's sort of, and that's why it's in there. And that's why we made it, is we wanted to show like this is a little bit of a different Jason than we knew from the original films. Like he's learned some lessons, some of that humanity that made him a child, that he came from. Like there's still something in there, you know what I mean? And I think that after all these years, because it hasn't brought him to the afterlife, people haven't stopped coming here. It's like, I keep doing this, but why do I keep doing this? Because nothing ever changes. And, and it's sort of like, should I be killing people? You know what I mean? Like, what did these kids do? Like, they really didn't do much. Like, yeah, I'm just doing what I'm told, but why isn't this ending the curse? Why hasn't the curse, like, now, why haven't I done my duty? Like, how much more do I have to do before, I just get to rest? This is just never going to stop. It kind of puts it, it puts Jason in perspective for who he becomes and why he acts the way he acts in Never Hike in the Snow, where he's trying to hide. He's not actively hunting Cortland. He's just keeping an eye on him. He just happens to accidentally get caught on camera. Same thing with Kyle. He's not actively hunting Kyle. He's stalking him and making sure he doesn't go where he's supposed to go, but not go where he's not supposed to go, but he ends up doing that. And so only when he does that does he step in and have to do something about it. It isn't until Never Hike Alone 2 that he's reached rage mode to the nth degree, and he's willing to leave the comfort of Crystal Lake to go enact his revenge. But everything is a reaction to the pain and suffering that he's sort of gone through from parts 2 through 8, where he's killed all these people and it always ends so poorly for him. The cycle of violence always ends with his death, but it's not his death. It's just his temporary death. It's a temporary pain. It's a temporary sort of, stoppage of his life cycle that just restarts again without his consent. You know what I mean? He just wakes back up, and here I am again. I got to go again. But by the time he gets washed out to sea in part 8, as ridiculous as that film is, if you just think about the context of what it's like to be a character in this world and to be him and to sink to the bottom of the Hudson River and to just like have your skin burning off because of toxic waste, and you're like, fuck, they got me again. Oh, I'm not feeling too good. Ugh. And then you got to walk 500 miles home, and you finally get there and you just sit down. And then all of a sudden you hear like, hey guys, you want to party? And you're like, fuck, I just wanted to sit down. I just got back. Like, you know what I mean? It's just like, just leave me alone.
And that's the thing too. Like when you see Jason sitting there, like it's not like he's doing much when he's not killing people. Like that's the vibe I got from it. That he's just kind of like,
He's just
like you
waiting to
said.
kill.
Yeah. And I mean, that's, it's,
What a
you don't,
lonely life, you know what I mean? And that's the thing too. It's like what a lonely life he lives.
yeah.
And how about those two shots too? When you first see him in that music video, probably two of the best shots that we've ever shot for the whole
Yeah.
thing. And it was in a music video that cost less than a couple grand.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it was for us those are like the two, like the light coming through the ceiling slats.
Yeah.
Just, I don't know, the way the costume looked, some of my acting in that, like, I felt like I was really firing on all cylinders with posturing and a lot of different stuff. So, I'm really proud of that little music video. The music's done by the same guy who does all the end credit songs, Trevor Vaughn. So he did Another Soul for Never Hike Alone 1. We did Cut Here for Never Hike in the Snow. Disappear is Trevor's song that we just made that music video for. The cool thing with the Ghost Cut is it comes with that great voiceover by Tom Matthews, which adds context to that scene. Also with the Ghost Cut, you get a couple of bonus scenes in between with like Tracy Savage throwing away to Vinny's press conference. The introduction to the Ghost Cut also has our second trailer, the beginning of our second trailer, cut into the front with the Camp Crystal Lake commercial, and the original newsreel where we brought in Ron Sloan to do a voiceover. We brought in Deb Voorhees to do a voiceover. We brought in Cindy Kanai to do a voiceover. And who did the third voiceover? It was Deb. And then Adam Marcus does a voiceover. So you have these Friday the 13th alumni coming in to just give little tidbits and little fun things. And so that was the cool thing, was like, being able to call them up because I met them on the circuit and say, hey, I got this one line. Do you mind recording it for me? And them doing it. And, it just gives fans that little extra, the people who know, it just means that much more to them.
It definitely does. And one thing that, you may know about or you may not know about, and, something that's full of speculation at this point. And, we know that the Camp Crystal Lake show is coming on Peacock, and we've talked a little bit about that, but, they're keeping it wrapped up really tight. We don't really know. I'm more nervous for it than anything else. Do you have any thoughts about that or, any like hopes for it? Or
yeah, I have lots of hopes. I think that like Pamela's story is one that's always been one that fans have wanted to see explored. I think that's pretty safe to say. I think the fact that they're doing that as a series platform saves a film from having to carry the entire weight of the franchise if it's just going to be about Pamela.
Right.
I think if a film was trying to carry the weight of just Pamela, it would struggle because people want to see Jason. But because it's a TV show, and I think from what I can tell, it's going to jump around in time, even though it's mostly going to focus on Pam. I think that it has an opportunity to really do some special things. It's in the hands of the guy who created Hannibal. So I think that that's a pretty good starting point. I think what we have is Friday the 13th in the hands of someone who's not only an accomplished showrunner, now director, now that he's, he just directed Dust Bunny, but at the same time, he's a huge Friday the 13th fan. And you can see it on his sleeve. Like he wears it on his sleeve. And I feel like part of the, I think with, Friday the 13th Part 9, Shannon and Swift are big fans, but Marcus Nispel not so much. And his lack of knowledge of the series up until then sort of shows up on camera because there are certain things that he does with Jason that, I think that someone who's like more of a fan of the series would be like, I don't know if we would have had Jason do that. Same thing with Freddy versus Jason. Ronnie Hugh not having sort of like either a Freddy or a Jason aesthetic. He just sort of had his own aesthetic and didn't really think like a fan. And so he made his version of Jason that I think that like worked for the movie, but as fans of Jason, we're sort of like, that's not really my Jason. Like that Jason's kind of weird. And then like other series, like, Friday the 13th was the series that people got when they were like in trouble. It was like, oh, I got to direct a Friday the 13th. Ugh. So it sort of had that backlash in a way. And I think that to have someone like Brian Fuller, who has, really shown himself as, a top tier creator in the market, And then also a big Friday fan. The combination of those two things alone are what to get excited about. And then the fact that we get to see Friday the 13th in a series aspect, not as, some antique hunter, cursed objects
You're
show,
not lying about that.
but in the context of that. And then, hey, maybe we're not supposed to see origin stories for things. Maybe it's going to be too much, but I'm a firm believer that there's a great story there. I know I have a version of it that I would love to tell one day. I don't know if I'll ever get to. But it's something that I would love to, I think once Never Hike Alone 2 is done and I'm just kind of out on the circuit, I may do some like, you know what, I'll never make this movie, but here's the movie and I'll just pitch it. I'll just be like, here's what I would have done. But I think that Pamela has that opportunity. And then, the thing I'm concerned about is like, what are they going to do with the movies? Like, how are the movies coming back? And then once they get the movies back, what is their strategy? So they're not doing what 2009 did, which was like kind of getting off to a false start, starting without a real sense of this is the trilogy. This is how this film leads to the next film, leads to the next film, because the next thing that needs to happen for Friday the 13th in the theaters, for it to be successful in days, is to sort of drop all the baggage of not being able to connect a few different films together. They got to like make them connect, be so well thought out, because that's what will make it so interesting. And the talent is out there. And obviously I'd love to work on it and I'd be a great consultant on it, if not a great director for it. So, I'm hoping that after Never Hike Alone 2 hits and people see the way that we've woven 3 films together, plus a music video, plus the other things that we've dropped hints on, then once they see it all together, they go, wow, like Friday the 13th can be intricate and interesting. And, it can be coached up. Yeah. I think it's that, Friday the 13th is that star athlete that's never been motivated to lift weights. You know what I mean? Like if you can convince this thing or this series to really put an effort into the story content that they have there with the character that they have, that it could be, just as big and eventful and connected as, the new Halloween trilogy, and the new Scream movies. You know what I mean? It can, if not on par, it can do better than those. You know what I mean? There's an opportunity. It's like, now is the time, the rebirth of the slasher. So you got to strike while the iron's hot. And, I think with, I say this with like all due respect and everything, but like the fact that the series, like the true worry for me is Sean Cunningham and Victor Miller.
Yeah.
Not from them being the creators or anything like this, but I feel like they're there for the original, but they weren't there for any of the things that made Friday the 13th what it is today. Steve Miner was the one who gave birth to the Jason that we know and love. If it wasn't for Tom Savini making Ari Lehman look like a deformed child, we wouldn't have got the Jason that we got. If it wasn't for Tom Savini doing the effects in Friday the 13th Part 1, Friday the 13th Part 1 is not as effective and doesn't do as well in the modern cinema, because he took that hyper violence and brought that into the slasher. Unlike, even though they were ripping off Halloween, they went further than Halloween did, because Halloween didn't show that much gore. This was the first like real gorehound slasher film, and everything that you see in the 80s that was built off the slasher formula was built off the Friday the 13th formula of the slasher formula, and not the Halloween formula. Halloween even borrowed from Friday the 13th eventually, and they became Friday the 13th films. So, I feel like with that, you got to look at people like Steve Miner, Joe Zito, Tom McLaughlin, even John Carl Buechler, for like the way that he brought Jason to that uber design realm of, not uber design realm, but the fact that Part 7, and when you really say like, look at how cool the costume is, this is what, like, Jason doesn't look like sack Jason anymore. You know what I mean? Like, this is a scary creature. Like, now what are you going to do with this thing? You know what I mean? So, and the fact that like Kane Hodder being in 4 movies and then going to conventions for 30 years, carrying the torch for Friday the 13th, getting fans excited about new stuff. I feel like, Sean Cunningham dipped in and out whenever he wanted, and it wasn't his focus. Victor Miller probably had an opportunity to sort of do something and stick with it. And I honestly, if you ask me, I've watched a lot of Friday the 13th behind the scenes stories, and the way that they describe the way that Friday the 13th get made, Victor Miller was 1000% a work for hire. I mean, it's not even a question. He said it in interviews where they said, yeah, Sean came up with the idea for Friday the 13th, scariest movie that ever was. He paid me to write a script. And I wrote a script called The Long Night at Camp Blood because the original Friday the 13th was supposed to be anthology films, just like the Halloween films.
Yeah.
So, when they asked to come back, like Sean was like, no, I'm moving on with my career. I'm doing these great. It was only when they made money and they were happy to collect those checks. And obviously Victor wasn't collecting checks and he was definitely owed a check, I believe. And I think even though technically you could say one thing or the other, I think that Sean should have looped Victor in and we probably could have avoided all this. But I think anything that is helmed by either one of those two, I would actually be worried because I don't think either of them really gets the fan. I think that they love the fact that the franchise has, been that project for them that really put them on the map and will give them something to always be tied to for the rest of their lives. But they really owe a lot to everyone else that came after them that are really there and the ones who sustained it and the fans who sort of like have a certain expectation. I'm just not sure that they are the two who are specifically in touch with what the fan wants. I would say that someone like thank God Victor has hired Brian to be the showrunner. And I'm sure Victor's going to have a lot to say about Pamela because that was his character. He did come up with her. So it makes sense that he's working in that world. But if you told me that, next week that, a new Friday the 13th is coming out and Sean Cunningham is the main producer and he's the one coming up with the story, I would be like, hold on to dear life for this because I have no clue where this is going. Because the last time Sean got involved, he told Adam Marcus to take the mask off Jason, and we got Jason Goes to Hell, which jumps every shark that there could be jumped. Changes the entire lore of the franchise, and is the first film in the series that really got me pissed off. Like as a child, I mean, I was 12 years old, but it was still like, this is what? Why did you do that to Jason? I was so upset. And I was just so upset at the end of that film. Like, this is not what I signed. Like, when you tell me Jason Goes to Hell, this is not the film I would have thought that there would have been there. And please go back and do it again. And so, it really, they really worry me. And like I said, all due respect to them, like I do, like, I think they without them, obviously we don't have anything. But I think it's silly that we've had to wait 5 years for them to settle their lawsuit. Or however long it's been, 4 years. And within their lawsuit, they ruined the Friday the 13th game, fighting over it. And honestly, like, this could have been settled out of court. This really just could have been settled out of court. There were no casualties had to be like rounded up this way. And as a fan, I'm still sort of upset. I'm glad that it's over and it's good that it's over. But, thank goodness for fan films because we had to step in and we should have never had to. You know what I mean? Like Friday, like Never Hike Alone could have come along in 2017. We could have had new stuff by 2018, 2019 from the studios. But because they didn't, people always ask like, why did you do this? I'm like, well, who else was going to do it? Right. The studios weren't. And, I asked for everybody's help on Never Hike Alone and not a lot of people showed up. 239 backers showed up or 237 backers showed up, after one failed campaign. The second campaign barely raised enough to even pay for itself, never mind the movie. It was all of a sudden I could run a crowdfund and I could have 3,000 people show up.
Yeah.
And there were a ton of fan films coming out that were taking advantage of the fact that Never Hike Alone put the fan film on the map. So now these other groups are raising $50,000 to make their movies, and I couldn't raise 20. And so I'm like, well, when do I get a crack to go raise a real budget and actually start shooting some stuff? So, it was sort of like, yeah, I was going to take this opportunity also to have the opportunity to work with Tom Matthews, to work with Vinny Guastafaro, to continue, the Paramount storyline, to get everyone to buy in on this idea. That's a finite window. Because Tom's not going to be young forever. Vinny's not going to be young forever. I'm not going to have the ability to really kind of approach this stuff forever. So now's the time to do it. Now it's going to be done and I can concentrate on original stuff afterwards. But this was really the only window of opportunity I was ever going to get to direct a Friday the 13th like this with these people involved. And if you think about it in a bigger perspective, if I had gone through the proper ranks to get a job on a Friday the 13th film, without a film being directed, I would have never been able to direct one. You know what I mean? Like, but through my own sort of will and way, I willed into existence the opportunity to direct two of my favorite Friday the 13th actors in the actual storyline that is my favorite storyline, the Tommy Jarvis storyline, and I get to write the final chapter to the Tommy Jarvis storyline, which is something that fans have wanted for a very, very long time. So, yeah, I think that there's just something like, why wouldn't you take that opportunity? How could anyone walk away from that opportunity, especially if fans were willing to put money down on the table and support you? You know what I mean? Like, oh, I'm sorry. Well, I just don't make fan films. I'm too good for fan films. It's like, well, this is just a good story. I don't care it's a fan film. I don't care I can't make money off of it. Like, I've made money off of other films that, like, whatever. Like, I've had so much more fun, and it's been more rewarding doing this and losing money than actually working on some films and making more money than I needed. Like, I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world.
A couple comments that are coming through that I definitely, want to share with you. Ethan is saying that's why Vincent is perfect to direct a Friday film. He is a fan and understand what needs to be done.
So Ethan, before you move on, Ethan Boltman, he is a backer of Never Hike Alone 2.
That is
awesome. He got the character perk, and in the wash, when it all came out and said and done, Ethan is the name of Doug Tate's character in Never Hike Alone 2. Doug Tate plays one of the deputies. It's Deputy Ethan Boltman. So
that's awesome.
Ethan got his actor is a Friday the 13th alumni. So I think that's pretty cool. That ended up working out for Ethan.
We're definitely happy to have you here, Ethan. Welcome. Yeah, definitely. That is so cool. But to his point, man, I mean, it's and Matt, I know you're going to agree with this. It's just like when you start to get people that don't really understand stuff, it's the people that love the stuff that you want in charge of things, to understand the story and to be the people on the forefront of these things. And there's so many people in the chat that are agreeing exactly with what Ethan is saying, and it's true, and Val is saying that's why these fan films have been so amazing. Like Michael said, thank you, Val. They come from a true love and understanding for the franchise, and they do. And that's the thing that it's so wishy-washy with these, and that's why I get so nervous. And Matt, you and I have talked about it a lot, to where when you really care about something, you get really nervous when new stuff is coming out, especially Friday the 13th, because the last few things that you've gotten, have been like, well, is this really what I want? Now, granted, in defense for the remake, and I will tell you this, Trent has become a show favorite on this channel because he's such a dickhead. Like, literally, if I were to ever meet that guy, I would. Matt, what do we always say if you ever meet Trent?
I want him to tell me to just fuck off. Like, I would love it. I would love it. I want him to be the biggest dick I've ever met in my life, and I'll just smile, take it. Yeah, Trent is amazing. Like, yeah.
I have never met a character that I hated more the first time I saw that movie. Right? It was just like, you talk about cheering in the movies. When he died, it was like,
he is stupendous.
Yeah. I just wonder how, and I think with me, it was like, it's fine to have a character like that in the movie, but like, when you look at it, you go like, how did anyone end up at this guy's house? Like, how did this girl date this dude? Like, he just seems so over the top bad that like, and she's so over the top good that like, how did these two end up together? This makes no sense.
It doesn't.
And then how did this group of characters even come together? They look like they just got like they warped into a map together by mistake. Like they don't seem like real friends. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure. Yeah. It's Travis Van Winkle is the name of the actor, right?
Yes.
Well, he is awesome.
It's like they spawned into a war zone in a video game on a random team of like 4.
I'd say they're there to drive his boat and enjoy his riches. Yeah. I mean,
going to a rich guy's house. Let's do it.
Yeah, let's go.
This is an outside game, guys. Like, oh, he's great, man. He's great.
Wayne is saying you have the passion, now you need the power, and you have the power and the passion, man.
Yeah, but you know what? Fans have given me a lot of power. Almost at $300,000 to make this film, which I don't get all that money, but it's still a lot. And fans can still help. Definitely want to spend some time like really getting out there and getting on the promotion train in the next couple of weeks, because we got post production to pay for. We got stuff to ship all over the world, and we put every dollar into these movies that people invest. And so, I think now sort of like we're going to get into that realm of like, hey, credits are going to close eventually.
Yeah.
And there's still opportunities out there for people to become producers. There's one more associate producer perk left. There's a couple of co-producer perks left. There's there's an executive producer level one that's huge that comes with a shotgun. We have the new for people that had already backed, we wanted to incentivize them to come back. There's a new raffle that if you upgrade to that new raffle stuff, you can enter into, you get a new perk. It enters you into a raffle to become an executive producer and walk away with the other shotgun that Tommy uses in the movie. We bought a double of the same shotgun and we use them in different scenes. So you get to use something that's on scene. I don't know if you guys saw the images we released last week, but that shotgun that Tommy's holding in that scene, a backer's going to walk away with that.
Yeah,
is there any other Friday the 13th out there that that you can just get instant access to like one of those perks? Like we're an email away to be like, hey, I saw that thing, I see that poster, I see that sign, I see that costume. If people hit us up, like they're available. People can buy that stuff and they can buy it for a good price. Not only can they buy it for a good price, if they buy it for a high enough price, they become a producer on the movie, they get their name in the front of the credits, and they get to keep a screen use prop from something that like in a decade, and when people look back on this, and maybe one day if we end up on like the box set in some way, shape, or form, like, you can say you own a piece of movie history, like especially fan film history, which is like, it's really cool. This is especially that it's got, things that are tied to Tom, things that are tied to Vinny. These are all positive, and anything like, we just want fans to really support the film and take it on as their own. And then I got no need to hang on to 5,000 props for a movie and store them in some. I want somebody who's going to bring people in their house and be like, you see this, that's the shirt that Tom wore in Never Hike Alone 2, and it's in a case. You know what I mean?
That guy's right there, by the way.
We should talk. I got so much stuff and I can't show everything. Like there's stuff I can only show after the film. We have some cool stuff that we can give away to people. And not just giveaway, obviously, but if people want those things, they got to get in at the high level backer stuff. They got to get in at producer level and all that stuff. And, they're going to walk away. They're going to have first chance to get some stuff. And then, we're going to hit the private seller market to help, pay for the rest of the bills. But, that's one of the cool things is that fans, I want them to pick the bones clean. You know what I mean? Like, not just to help raise money, but for the fact it's just cool to see people like, we have a big fan who got to work on the show his name's Kaiden Ritchie. And Kaiden is a cosplayer, and he actually got to work with the production design department. He got to work with the effects department, and he made we have an archery range in the film, and he aged up all the archery range targets in the film, and he got to keep one. You know what I mean? So he has that hanging up on his wall as a memory, but it's also something cool. I also have 3 more of them. So it's just, I don't know. You guys will see. I think once everyone sees the film and then I start listing stuff on the website, everyone's going to go, that's cool. I want that hanging on my, like you guys have horror walls behind you right now.
Yeah.
Every horror fan has that room, that movie room. Well, if you want to hang something really, really cool in your movie room that you can point to somebody, and say, you know what that's from? And then you put on the DVD the Blu-ray that you got out of it, and they watch that film and they go, whoa, that's cool.
Yeah.
And it's
that's
also a good feeling to be giving, for the money to go to, helping create these films like that.
Yeah. We still have to hire, we still have people to hire and things to do. It's not cheap to make movies. We've experienced, so many like setbacks that were out of our control. Our location being booked out by somebody who was able to get to it before we were. The state of emergency in the mountains making it so we had to delay a whole week of filming by 3 months. Everything drove up cost. Having to wait another year meant we have to pay taxes. Going through SAG meant that we have to pay all these additional penalties that, like, in order to get it through, like, you got to, they hold on to money and all these different things. And so it's, we were ahead, and then a few things happen, and now we've been playing catch up. So that's been my focus. Like, we have one more scene to film and then we're done. And then The rest of my focus is going to be editorial and trying to catch the campaign back up to the actual cost of the film. At the end of the day, this is probably going to be about a $350,000 feature.
Oh, wow.
And that's nothing to, but still for $350,000, I think people are still going to feel like, yeah, that's $350,000 on screen, but it feels like there's millions of dollars on screen. So, always the point. But with Never Hike Alone being $50,000, it was because it was 5 people making it most of the time. Like we've had, our average for people on set is probably about 20 to 25. That's not even a full crew. That's still that's the biggest crew we've ever worked with. And we needed to, because these scenes were complicated. We had a lot going on, and we built a really cool team, and can't wait for people to see the movie.
Yeah.
A couple things I want to share with you. Robert's coming on here saying
Rob,
Vince
I know.
is the best.
How you doing, Rob?
Russell is saying fan films are so awesome. How can you not like them? And I definitely agree with that. Lydia, on her first day as a mod, is already on top of things and saying you can support Never Hike Alone on their Indiegogo here, and she's provided the link for everyone in the chat, and I will do so as well. Attach it to this video so anyone on rewatch can see. Matt and I are huge supporters of the fan films. We're always trying to help out in any way that we can with these things, because we back them 100%. Especially the ones that that we're really passionate about. We love the Never Hike Alones, Dave's It's Me Billy, big fans there.
Yeah,
Dylan's New Nightmare, we can't wait for that. We love Jason Rising. That was a blast. We watched just a couple weeks ago, and let's look at this guy right here. Got the Jason Rising t-shirt on.
Now. I love those guys. James and Carl are the best, and they we're getting to help them out. They were big. Let me tell you, they were MVPs on Never Hike Alone. They're the ones who found us that lake set.
No shit.
And so that just goes to show you the power of the fan film, fans working together. Like I came out, I helped James and Carl. I loved helping them. Like I'm just about as passionate as Jason Rising as I am Never Hike Alone. I love that movie.
Yeah.
I think they did a fantastic job. They're fantastic people. And the fact that they were able to come back and like they couldn't wait to help on Never Hike Alone 2, and they helped out big time. Like I couldn't have done this without them. So kudos to them. Kudos to Cecil and Robert and the rest of the team at Dylan's New Nightmare, Miko Hughes, Dylan. I almost called him Dylan Porter. Dave McRae, coming back as Freddy, Nora Hewitt, and her work on the effects, Mike Rotola and his sculpt for the new Freddy, Ben Meredith, and being the cinematographer, again, worked with Ben on Pathosis, worked with Ben on 13 Fanboy. Ben was one of our cameramen on Never Hike Alone, came in and filled in for Evan for one night and filmed a lot of the fight scenes. So, yeah, I mean, I really hope fans are checking out multiple things. You obviously got to see Dylan's New Nightmare, at least like that version of it.
Right.
We're working on it again right now. We got a really great response from the Mad Monster screening. We saw a couple little technical glitches that maybe some other caught, but we're like, okay, we'll fix that and we'll get it going. And we're really excited for that. And I think for me personally, obviously hats off to Cecil, who it's his baby. Like he's the one who came to me with it, and I jumped on board. Same thing with James and Carl. I jumped on board because they came to me with good ideas, and instantly I was like, I want to be a part of this. So I'm really proud of Cecil. I'm very proud for him because I know that he's going to get a lot of good recognition from this. And really excited about the Dylans, and then I get to look back and be like, wow, it's kind of cool. Like this we're looking at like an end of summer, early fall release for Dylan's New Nightmare, depending on one specific thing. We're waiting to just hear back how long something's going to take. And then we'll be able to really say, okay, this is the day it's coming out. But then, a month and it's either 4 or 6 weeks after that, Never Hike Alone 2 is coming out. So this fall, Womp Stomp is involved with, we're co-producers and, shepherders of the Dylan's New Nightmare project. So we get to sort of take a little bit of credit for that. And then we get to release Never Hike Alone 2, and that's my baby. But to say like Halloween season 2023, Womp Stomp Films is going to have a big impact in the fan film world. And we think that because we're talking about Freddy, because we're talking about Jason, because we're presenting projects that are in 2 they're in the worlds of two franchises that are like bone dry for content from the studios. They're gonna get a lot of attention, and I'm hoping that this, raises our cachet a little bit higher, that, Hollywood studios start to take us a little bit more seriously, and they start considering us for, some of those Blumhouse Tilt projects, and, XYZ and A24 and all those companies that, like, we're a good team. I'm really proud of the team. I really believe in the team that we've built. We have some original projects that we'd really like to get funded. We have access to talent. We have access, not only talent on screen, but also behind camera and in our post and in our development. So, I think 2023 is going to be a big year for Womp Stomp Films, and hopefully that leads into even bigger things in 2024.
Can't wait to see what you guys do, man. In all honesty, definitely looking forward to it. It's been so cool so far. And yeah, and I'm sure, Matt feels the same way. Like we just love talking about the stuff, and him and I'll make a fan film one day, and I'll be blowing up your Instagram. Like, Hey, Vinny, what do you think about this? What do you think? Look at this shot right here. Like, is that a machete? It's like, well, we didn't have one. We had a stick that Matt was using over there, but it's fine.
Well, you just, you write to what you have, and you write to what you know.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just so fun, man. All of this is just so fun for me. And it's a blast to, have you on the show, and you taking time out of your day to come and hang out with us. And
of course, I actually just got, I just got back from another trip. I went to the camp again yesterday, and I was just up there. I gotta say, it's just like, I think that's the other gem of this whole entire experience, is that we found that camp, and that camp is not just a set to us anymore. It's like a second home. If anybody follows me on Instagram, they can follow Womp Stomp Films, WOMP STOMPFILMS, or at me at Vincent DiSanti. You can see my name right down there. All one word, all lowercase. I'm going to post some pictures from some of the work that I've been doing up at college camp. Just cleaning it up, because eventually we want to open it up and give people the location so they can go check it out, and they can hike up to it, and they can see the set. But in the meantime, I'm building all of these things that hopefully will be a nice, it'll be a treat when you get up there. It's not just going to see an abandoned camp, but it's this place that's been brought back to life. And it's been like my favorite hobby to do this summer in between filming.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. John is asking if you're working with SAG members in production, is production hold due on strike, or does the budget allow you to continue?
No, we got everything that we needed with our SAG actors, and there's some people who are like, they're not SAG eligible quite yet, but we can shoot them and then like just basically say that they did it, like, to do it. We only have 1 day left, and everybody's doing it as a favor, so no one's really holding us to the SAG litigation stuff. I mean, we're not, I'm not Netflix. Right. Not withholding billions from my actors. You know what I mean? Like, I'm raising a little scratch for them, and a lot of them are volunteering their time. So there is no real need to get SAG involved. It's unfortunate what's going on with everything right now. I think the industry is in like big turmoil. I think one of the big problems is that streaming is not making as much as people say it is. I think people are investing in streaming companies, but the return is not really there. I think the whole model has to change. I don't think that we can survive on this model as it is now if people are just going to be able to stream stuff for free. I think that it should be more of a la carte situation where you just sign up for a usage and then you pay per thing that you want to see. Yeah. It's that simple. Maybe you get some things free. Maybe you get something with the base like subscription, but if you want like the big show, you want the Game of Thrones, well, you're going to have to pay $11.99 for this season.
Right.
I think that's fair. And I think that now, there is no more. Well, how many people have played Game of Thrones? Well, you know what? 40 million people, however, paid $11.99 to watch this friggin' thing.
Yeah.
So that's our money, Now pay our actors. And then every time someone logs in to watch it again, do it again. But, when they took away the commercial, which was good for the viewer, it was bad for the producer. It was bad for the studios because that was the revenue stream. That's how people made residuals, was that it got, Seinfeld got replayed on TBS. And every time, Colgate, ran a new commercial, they had to pay Jerry and the rest of the crew, for, advertising on a rerun. And that's the way it used to work. We're like, home video sales, the Blu-ray, the DVD, which the DVDs still sell well. That market has dwindled massively because they're not printing as much stuff on, physical media, and they're putting things for free on streaming, and then those things disappear, and then people have to go and find it, and they end up having to order, all this stuff. well, they just sort of eliminated all the revenue streams and then increased all the budgets. It made no sense. And they're just not running it wisely. And I think eventually they're just going to be forced into a different way of doing it. And I hope that the actors and the writers get their end of the bargain, because let me tell you something. These studio executives, they don't need that much money.
Right.
It's not that hard to run a studio, not at all. And a lot of them do not have good taste. There's too many bad projects that come out from these studios. And you know, how lazy do you have to be to run Disney and just basically go like, well, we're just going to take all our old movies and then we're going to make them live action.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's all we're going to do. You know what I mean? And we're going to make Marvel movies and Star Wars movies and remakes of old movies and nothing new. It's like, what kind of business model is that?
The originality anymore, you know, you're just seeing a lot of, you know, of the same stuff just over and over and over again.
And there are all these old fogies who have been in the business way too long, who just think about money, who just care about the bottom line, who care nothing about artists, who care nothing about creativity, who aren't there. Like, you know, say what you want about Walt Disney. You know, he's a product of his time. You know, he's probably racist and probably a million other different things, or hated people, whatever you can say about him. But the stories I hear about it was that when the buck stopped at Walt could walk into a story room and give you story notes. I know Bob Iger can't do that.
Yeah.
I know that these guys who run in Netflix can't do that. They're money people that work their ways up as executive assistants, that worm their way into the things, and they wormed their way all the way up to the top, and now they're doing stuff. But if you ask them to sit on an actual creative panel, that's the difference. Is that back in the day you had a Walt Disney who could outstory anybody at his studio because he was a visionary, he was a pioneer and a visionary. These people aren't visionaries, they're business people. That's why they're selling off their movies that cost $30 million as tax write-offs, because they're not thinking about the creatives that were involved. They're just thinking about the money that's involved and the way that they invested it poorly. Look at what happened to, like, you know, Zack Snyder's Justice League. And like, I mean, if anything, you can say whatever you want about the Snyderverse or whatever it is. I'm not a Snyder bro. I'm not any of those. I just happen to like those movies. Yeah. And when I watched the original Justice League and Zack Snyder's Justice League, and I went, wow,
it's they're two different movies.
Look what a studio did to this, what this could have been. You know, maybe we could have used maybe 15 minutes less of Jason Momoa walking down the bridge with the water and the music. Maybe we didn't need that scene, but you know what I mean? Like, for whatever it is, but I'd rather have the auteur's vision.
Yeah.
That way I get something that is presented as the auteur's language and not something that's been hacked to death by the studio because they talked to the marketing department and the marketing department says the algorithm says that it needs to be like this. It's like, fuck the marketing department, fuck the algorithm, hell with all this stuff. They used to not have those things, and that's when movies were the best.
Yeah.
You know, from the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, we didn't have that stuff. The minute they started doing let's get the mothers together in Arizona to sit in an early screening, and then we'll sit down with them after them and do a panel and get their opinion on the movie and what we should do with it. It's like, they're not trained. They're just bringing their kids. Yeah. Don't ask them for opinions on the movie. Ask your director who you've hired and you've paid all these millions of dollars to. Like, just let the artist create, put it out there, let the film do whatever it's going to do, and move on. And they'll find their audiences or they won't. But you just got to keep creating and trying new things, and that's how new things pop up. But if you keep trying to go back down the nostalgia boner land, I mean, obviously I'm doing Friday the 13th and all that stuff, but at least we're trying something new. We're not doing the old formula.
Right.
But like it's insane that this is where the studio systems come to. But it makes sense because, you know, creatives don't run Hollywood anymore. The money people do.
Yeah. Matt, I think I opened a can of worms earlier because Russell's saying, you can do it, Michael and Matt. I have faith in y'all to do a fan film. And James has already chimed in to say, if you ever make a movie, Matt and Michael, I would love to be in it. Even if I got slashed up, it would be fun.
I think we could do it.
Dying in the movies is the best part.
Oh, God. Done open a can of worms. Now Vince is going to get annoyed with me because I'm going to be like, hey, man, we're thinking about all this.
Hey, I have an email. If you guys ever want to get into it, I have a specific email that I send to people. It's like, if you want to get into fan films, here are the steps.
Yeah, man.
Here are the rules for fan films, and here's the rules for crowdfunding. Have at it. Have fun.
Yeah, man. I'd definitely love to check that out for sure.
And it doesn't have to be an hour-long thing. You could do a 5-minute, like a good 5-minute scene is actually just as powerful, or will get even more popular than something that's an hour long because people don't have to invest that much time. You know what I mean? Like something that's quick is usually something that does really, really well on YouTube and especially social media.
I think it'd be something definitely fun to do. Vince,
Hell,
I
the
want
Batman versus Predator we were talking about. How long's that? Like 9
5,
minutes
6
or
minutes.
something?
Yeah, it's not long.
And it
Yeah,
does.
not long.
It has an impact, man, for sure.
Hell, there was
Exactly.
even one I saw with Batman versus Darth Vader that I thought was ridiculous.
Yeah. I did see that one. That one was funny.
Just like, you got to be freaking kidding me. This looks great. Batman's talking to Oracle and everything, and he's got the hologram on his arm, and he's like, I need to get something first. And it's showing a lightsaber spinning right there. I'm like, you got to be freaking kidding me. This is fantastic. I absolutely love it. But Vince, I want to say, man, thanks again for coming tonight. And
of course,
closing thoughts. Matt, you have any closing thoughts for tonight?
No, I'm excited for Never Hike Alone too, and
Yeah.
I just want to thank you as well, Vince. It's been a pleasure, and like I said, I'm still new to the fan film thing, and you've filled my head with all sorts of knowledge about the ins and outs, and yeah, man, pleasure's all mine. Thank you, buddy.
Well, I appreciate you guys for having me on, man.
Yeah, anytime, man. And we would absolutely love for you to come back after Never Hike Alone 2 comes out.
I think I got to come. Like everyone who I talk to, I got to come back around because I want to see everyone's reactions. I want to see what everyone has to say. If I had any closing thoughts, I'd just a reminder: if you haven't backed the campaign yet, you still got time to do it. Check us out on Womp Stomp Films on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, on whatever the new mentions thing is for Instagram's Twitter. We're on TikTok. We don't use it a lot. YouTube, especially. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Watch the old films. Indiegogo, we got lots of perks from $10 to $10,000. You got lots of ranges and lots of cool stuff to get. We have a few vinyls left. We have some signage. We have some masks, like lots of good stuff on the campaign. But also, Dylan's New Nightmare is going to be closing their credits soon. The film is releasing either at the end of August or the beginning of September. So you have until about August 20th to get your name in the credits. And then we're closing that not closing the campaign, but we're closing the credits off. And Michael can speak from experience. Like, this is a film that you want to get your name on. When this comes out, you're going to want to say, I was a part of it. Both films, and not expensive to get on both films. And if you got some money and you want to invest in something really, really cool for this year and you want to brag to your friends, there's 2 films that are coming out this fall that you can become a producer on, which we're trying to get those last minute producers that are really going to help us out with the final pushes of our films. So we're just trying to motivate people to say, like, if you want to give yourself a present this year for Halloween, look at one of these 2 films. And if you're a Freddy person or a Jason person, there's something for you to invest in and you to tie your own name and yourself to these. I mean, look at what Ethan did. Yeah. His name is in this movie, and now he's, he's Doug Tate's character name. And there's lots of cool stuff. Matt, we should probably talk because Cecil has the Freddy heads that Dave McRae wore in the film. They came off as one piece. So we're actually going to put those on the campaign. We're putting out to private backers that could actually really help us with the final cost of the post-production for the film. If anyone's interested, reach out to Cecil or myself and we'll put you in contact.
I absolutely will. That's right up my alley. And
we'll make sure Dave and Nora sign them and Miko sign them, and that way you get something that's a collector's item with certificates of authenticity and all that fun stuff.
Awesome.
Just before we wrap up and go, Val wants to let you know I just donated and got the 8x10 Jarvis versus Jason poster.
And that perk comes with a raffle ticket. So now you are entered into a raffle to become an executive producer and walk away with the Screen Use Shotgun, the Jarvis versus Jason Blu-ray, the 11x17 posters, the 8x10 pictures signed by me and Tom, and then there's a Jarvis versus Jason bundle for $150, which gives you all of those items in one. And then there's a little bit extra, if you at first purchase a camper pack, which is about $113, that will give you a ton of great perks: shirt, pins, Never Hike Blu-ray, and I believe a VHS, possibly. I might be lying about that one. But if you get the camper pack, you have the chance to upgrade and add the the Jarvis versus Jason for just a few more bucks. It takes you up to like $150, $160. You get all of that and that thing to enter. So it's really, really cool. And I would just, I would lobby that's the promotion that we're running right now. And then if people really wanted to support campaign, that is a great perk to get. And that poster looks cool. That the photography was done by Ashley Covington, who plays Deputy Sophie Thompson as well. The poster was done by RYVE Creative. So shout out to them for helping us create that cool, like Halloween Kill style poster, but we sort of took our own thing. Oh yeah, Rex.
Yeah, he got him a Rex. That's
cool. See, I mean,
and here's the thing. It's been 2 weeks, but Tuesday night, I will be going live and I'm giving my spoiler-free talk about Dylan's new nightmare. So I will be getting into that. I was working on a video. I have so much footage from Mad Monster. It's ridiculous. I did reach out to Dave to get him walking up the Welcome to Mad Monster video that he has such a nice clip for. It came out better than the one that I took. He's going to let me use that, but definitely looking forward to Tuesday night, you guys, to talk about Dylan's new nightmare. And again, Vince, thank you so much for hanging out with us. And we look forward to having you back, especially after Never Hike Alone 2's out. And then anytime you want to come by and bullshit, man, you're always welcome here.
Anytime.
We have the best guests here all the time, dude. You're definitely always welcome.
Yeah. Mike, Matt, thank you for having me. I really appreciate the platform and to, talk to your fan base. And, I just hope everyone's excited and we're ready to do this thing.
We can't wait, man. I'll talk to you two backstage for just a minute before we wrap up, but I'm going to go ahead and end the show. And I want to thank everybody for coming out and supporting us tonight and supporting Vince for Never Hike Alone 2. It's going to be great, you guys. We saw what he had with the last 2 movies. We already know. Vince, we already know. We already know it's going to be fantastic. So we can't wait. I will see you guys Tuesday. I love y'all. Peace out.